Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Recovery. Rukia felt a sense of urgency. Using Ichigo to help her while she recovered was proving effective. They had purified several hollows and dealt with unique challenges, including Oriheim's hollow brother and Chad's possessed pet. However, Rukia couldn't shake the feeling of dissatisfaction. Her Ryatsu was not recovering as quickly as she had hoped. In fact, it felt as though it was diminishing, which was impossible, but the concern lingered. If she didn't report back soon, the Onmitsukido would send someone to check on her. She needed to act. She needed to regain her powers. Sitting cross-legged on Ichigo's bed, she motioned for him to join her. "What are you talking about?" Ichigo asked, puzzled. "I want my powers back. I'm tired of waiting. We need to work on Ryatsu control so you can help me regain my abilities." Ichigo replied, "If we can do that, why don't I just use my sword on you like you did with me? Do you think that's easy?" "It requires a lot of skill," Rukia explained. "We only did it because our lives depended on it." The thought of trying to restore her powers that way felt daunting. Ichigo settled cross-legged in front of her. "All right, instruct me. First, close your eyes and slow your breathing. Focus on your shoulders. You should feel a gentle breeze along them." When Rukia had mentioned wanting to leave her Jigai for some exercises, Urahara had offered her a free chappie as a gesture of goodwill, suggesting that the Jigai would perform better with a constant soul presence. So, Ichigo was in his Shinigami form, while Rukia, still weak, was in her soul form, dressed in white robes. A chair was propped under the door to keep Karen from entering, and they sat on Ichigo's bed, holding hands as he tried to channel her Ryatsu back into her. "My Ryatsu, you know," she reminded him. "I'm trying, but it's all mixed up with mine," Ichigo replied. "Focus and try again." Ichigo closed his eyes, concentrating on gathering Ryatsu around him. "I keep hearing whispers when I'm focused." "What does that mean?" "Whispers? What do they say?" "I can't make it out, it's all jumbled." The thought that he might be hearing Sodi no Shirayuki, her Zanpakuto, crossed her mind. What if he could learn its name and achieve Shikai? Would they both share Sodi no Shirayuki? Or would she never regain it? "We need to try something different," Rukia said. They had been working on this for days, and while Ichigo had improved at controlling his Ryatsu, her recovery seemed stagnant. "There's a way to lower the barriers between us. Our Ryatsu would mingle naturally, and I think I could pull mine back into myself if you were pushing." "Is that safe?" Ichigo asked. "Not dangerous, exactly. But Ichigo, when do the barriers between a man and a woman naturally lower?" "What? You're joking." "I wish I were joking, but it's true. It's a spiritual connection. Just to clarify, we're talking about..." "Yes, intimacy." "Absolutely not. So you prefer fighting hollows instead?" Rukia challenged. "I'd rather fight hollows than do that with you. Aren't you like 150 years old?" "That's not right. My body is at the same stage as yours, and that matters just as much. It's not like I want to. I saved your life. If you had just taken care of that hollow, we wouldn't be in this situation. If you hadn't distracted me and run at the hollow, I would have taken it down easily. It was far below my level. Can't we wait a bit longer for you to get your powers back?" Ichigo suggested. "It's taking longer than I expected, and eventually, someone will come looking for me. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already." "Yeah, so?" Rukia hesitated but knew she had to be honest. "Giving my powers to a human isn't exactly legal." "You'd get in trouble?" Ichigo asked, concerned. "But if you hadn't done it, we all would have perished." "I know that, and you know that, but a substitute Shinigami can cause significant issues. Just because everyone made choices for good reasons doesn't mean there wouldn't be consequences. Technically, I could face severe punishment." Ichigo looked alarmed. What's wrong with those people? They wouldn't actually execute me. That's an old law that's rarely enforced. I'd probably just face imprisonment or house arrest, especially since I'm a Kachiki. I hope they're lenient with nobles. That's still unfair, Ichigo said. And it wouldn't be good for you either. If they found out, Division 12 might want to experiment on you. Experiment on me? What kind of place is Soul Society? It's a good place. Rukia assured him. It's just that the captain of Division 12 is a bit extreme, but he's the only one qualified for research, so he gets away with a lot. The captain commander keeps him in check. Experimenting on people isn't going too far. Only on criminals. Technically, you'd be considered one. Taking a deep breath, Ichigo said, so you're saying if we don't go through with this, you won't be able to hide that you gave me your powers, and if they find out, you'll be in prison and I'll be a test subject? Maybe? Ichigo screamed into his pillow, threw it across the room, and declared he was going for a walk. He leaped out of his window, running on air with surprising ease, disappearing into the evening. Rukia put the pillow back, adjusted it so it was perfectly square to the mattress, and wrapped her arms around her knees, wondering if she should get back into her jigai. She regretted saying what she did and couldn't believe she actually had. Maybe she should just wait, like a normal person. Khan chimed in, "Nei-san, you can have a moment with M-." She kicked him. What was wrong with Ichigo, saying he'd rather fight hollows than be with her? Sure, she'd rather fight hollows than be with him, but it wasn't like she was unattractive. He should appreciate being with an older woman. She felt like she was getting the short end of the stick. Rukia dropped her head on her knees and muttered to herself, "Stupid, stupid, stupid, stupid Rukia." After sitting motionless for most of an hour, a breeze blew through the window, and Rukia saw Ichigo's sandaled foot. He hopped off the bed, awkwardly unstrapped his zanpakuto, leaned it against his desk, and said, "So, if we have to, we should." "You're agreeing?" She didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. Avoiding her gaze, Ichigo replied, "It's not that big a deal, right? If some JRK experimented on me until I glowed blue and grew horns, and I could have avoided it by being with you, I'd feel like the biggest idiot in the world." "Exactly," Rukia said. "So, how do we do this?" he asked. "You've never done it before." "I'm 15, he exclaimed, turning red in a mix of embarrassment and frustration. "You'll have to tell me what to do." Feeling embarrassed herself, Rukia said, "I am familiar with the theory." Ichigo stared, then burst out laughing. "Familiar with the theory? 150-year-old version. Hey, it's not that funny. Our desires aren't as insistent as humans. Though they can be intense once activated. And I was a little kid for the first 50 years. So it's only been 100 years for you as an adult, huh?" Rukia replied, "Women of the Kachiki family do not casually engage in relationships. Of course, there were years before that when she was old enough, but that was none of his business." "Stop laughing at me." "I'm not laughing," he insisted, though he was clearly amused. Arms crossed, she waited for his laughter to subside. When it finally did, he sat up, wiped tears of mirth from his eyes, and said, "So. Now." She glanced at the chair leaned against the doorknob. In spirit form, they shouldn't be seen or heard, and the day offered extra protections. Ishin was still at work, and Karen should still be playing soccer at the park. Music was coming up through the floor, which meant Yuzu had the TV turned to the music video channel and was dancing. There wouldn't be a better time. Rukia said, "Khan, Chappie, in the closet." Khan protested, "I want to dash." "In the closet," Rukia said, her voice low and firm. The two mod souls went into the closet and closed the door. Rukia put the second chair under the doorknob, shut the window blinds, dropping the room into gloom, and said, "Ichigo, take off your clothing. No need to instruct me. I'm familiar with the theory too." But he didn't move. Feeling exposed, Rukia closed her eyes, put her hands to the collar of her robe, and said, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Her 3 came out as a squeak. A flutter of cloth, other sounds that were probably Ichigo getting undressed, which she ignored because she was focused on her own clothing. When she was ready, sitting on Ichigo's bed next to him, she peeked out between her lashes. Ichigo was bright red and had a hand over his eyes. Rukia said, "You can look now." 2 fingers separated, and Ichigo peeked out, his eyes tracking down. "So that's what it looks like," he said, a bit surprised. "Yeah, well, yours isn't exactly pretty either," she replied, trying to keep the mood light. Ichigo quickly covered himself again. "That's good," she said. "It means we can do this." "What about? You know." Rukia reassured him, "First, Shinigami aren't very fertile. Second, I'm not in heat. And third, I know a Kido I can use afterward to make sure that doesn't happen." Ichigo looked puzzled. "Shinigami go through heat? Like dogs? Be quiet and lay down." He lay on his side, head on his pillow, and Rukia lay next to him, only a few inches apart. Ichigo said, "This is the most awkward moment of my life." Looking down, Rukia replied, "And apparently the most intense. You'd better not get too carried away before we even start." He covered himself again, and she added, "Maybe you don't realize this, but you can't have a moment while covering yourself." Smartass. "Fine. Let's just get this over with." He moved closer, trying to take the next step. Rukia pushed him away gently. "Hey, you're not understanding this. We have to be connected for this to work. It can't just be mechanical." "What? So, do it right." He hesitated, "So, what should I do?" She pointed to a spot. "This is where you need to focus. Just be gentle." Blushing, he followed her instructions, and Rukia gasped at the unexpected sensations. Ichigo asked, "You don't, out of this, do you?" She lightly hit him. "No." Ichigo squinted, feeling a mix of curiosity and hesitation as he navigated the moment with Rukia. She stroked his chest gently, and he shivered at her touch. Gaining confidence, she reached around him, kneading the muscles in his back and asking, "How's that?" "Feels good," Ichigo replied, his voice low as he continued to explore their connection. Rukia gasped, her earlier thoughts fading away as they shared this NTMT moment. "It's not slimy," she corrected him, playfully. "It's just different." Ichigo chuckled, "Slimy in a good way, I mean." "Idiot," she teased, contemplating the next step in their growing intimacy. "Should we kiss?" "Probably," he agreed, realizing the significance of the moment. She moved closer, their noses brushing before their lips met softly. They kissed again, experimenting with the closeness, and Ichigo whispered, "I've heard a lot of guys kiss differently, so tell me if I do it wrong." Rukia responded, "You're supposed to part your lips when we kiss." "Oh," he said, and they tried again, opening up more. As their kiss deepened, Rukia felt her heart race, and Ichigo's hands moved instinctively, drawing them closer. "Ow!" Ichigo suddenly exclaimed, pulling back slightly. "What happened?" Rukia asked, concerned. "I missed," he winced, realizing the awkwardness of the moment. "Your abs are really firm." "Then just be more careful," she teased, playfully nudging him. As they resumed their exploration, Rukia wrapped her legs around him, shifting their positions so he was on top. The intensity of their connection grew, and she felt a rush of pleasure as they continued to explore each other. "I can't hold it anymore," Ichigo admitted, breathless. "You'd better hold it, or I'll make you regret it," she joked, a playful glint in her eyes. "Just give me a minute to calm down," he replied, lying beside her, still catching his breath. "Well, while you're calming down, maybe you can help me out a bit," she suggested, feeling the energy between them rise. "Feel that?" she asked, sensing their energies intertwining. Yeah. That's what we want, right? Ichigo replied, his focus sharpening. Rukia nodded, urging him to continue. But we need to be more in sync first. As they continued to explore their connection, Rukia felt a surge of energy. We'd better hurry, she said, reaching for him. Suddenly, Ichigo reacted, and Rukia playfully exclaimed, "You came all over me." Ichigo, sounding a bit amused, replied, "You grabbed me. It's not my fault." "Well, at least there's a tissue box right here," Rukia said, grabbing some tissues to clean up. "What happens to it?" Ichigo asked, curious. "It will break down into spirit particles," Rukia explained. "And you can use the tissues for your nose." "Hell. No," he replied, laughing. "What's your recharge time?" she asked, eager to continue. "You're really wanting to try again?" he asked, a smile forming. "I think we can get it right this time," she said confidently. Ichigo agreed, and they prepared to dive back into their connection, both feeling the excitement of the moment. Rukia felt empowered by their bond, and as they moved together, their energies intertwined, she knew they were on the brink of something extraordinary. "Rukia," Ichigo gasped, calling her name as they shared this powerful experience, their energies merging in a way that felt both exhilarating and transformative. As the moment reached its peak, Ichigo shouted a name that resonated deeply within them both, and Rukia felt a surge of power flow into her, transforming her attire into the black garb of a Shinigami. The unexpected consequences of their connection were just beginning to unfold. Sodi no Shirayuki was in Rukia's hands, in its Shikai form, dangerously close to Ichigo. Instead of causing harm, she had accidentally frozen a pillow solid. Ichigo, surrounded by a glowing blue Ryatsu, radiated power that would impress even a vice captain. Laid gently on the floor, his massive Zanpakuto transformed into a large, guardless, black and white triangular cleaver with a long white ribbon. Rukia felt a change within herself, as if she were expanding, like a plastic bottle being released from pressure. With a relaxed smile, Ichigo remarked, "Hey, midget, you're not a midget anymore." Rukia leaped from the bed and gasped at her reflection in the mirror. She had grown nearly a foot taller, but her appearance remained youthful, like a colt whose body hadn't fully caught up with her height. "What the hell?" Rukia exclaimed, feeling a mix of panic and confusion. Yet, recent events had left her too calm to fully react. Holding Sodi no Shirayuki, she felt her own Ryatsu surging, as strong as a third seat nearing vice-captain level. Unable to stop smiling, she covered herself and turned to Ichigo, who appeared strangely content, his own Ryatsu stronger than before. "Whose Zangetsu?" she asked. Using a blanket for modesty, Ichigo picked up the cleaver-like Zanpakuto. "I think Zangetsu is this." Dressed in Shinigami garb, they sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance while holding their Zanpakutos. Rukia explained, "You're a human with strong spiritual powers. That means you've always had dormant Shinigami powers deep down. By hosting my powers for a while, those abilities were awakened." "Makes sense," Ichigo replied. "Your powers are all good?" "I spoke to Sodi no Shirayuki. She seems fine." "That was the meditation thing?" "Jinzen, yes." Sodi no Shirayuki had appeared content, though a bit unusual. Rukia had learned that while they were meditating, Ichigo's Zanpakuto, Zangetsu, had also been present. "You yelled your Zanpakuto's name during the meditation," Rukia noted. "Don't put it like that." "How else should I put it?" Ichigo clarified, "During the meditation, I successfully returned your powers back to you." "Kind of," Rukia said. "Your Ryatsu is mixed in with mine." She touched his head, trying to ignore their earlier closeness. "And mine is mixed in with yours." "Is that bad?" "It will probably fade away with time," she predicted, though it was uncertain. They had shared a unique experience, intertwining their powers in a way that had never happened before in Soul Society. And somehow, she had grown taller. How would she explain her sudden growth? Perhaps a growth spurt. It wasn't unheard of for Shinigami, just unusual. And how to explain the mingling of their Ryatsu? She would have to wait and see if it faded. And your eyes are purple, Rukia pointed out. What? Ichigo rushed to the mirror, confused. I can't see myself in the mirror. You're a spirit. You don't cast a shadow. You saw yourself in the mirror, Ichigo reminded her. You can interact with physical objects. Reach out to the mirror with your Ryatsu, she instructed. Ichigo extended his Ryatsu, and his image began to appear in the mirror, initially wavering but gradually becoming clearer. His eyes matched Rukia's dark purple hue. What the hell? I have no explanation beyond that we've influenced each other, and hopefully, it will go away soon. DMN right it does, he grumbled. So now what? I need to return to Soul Society for a check-in. I could tell them you're a plus who discovered his Shinigami powers before becoming a hollow. That's not unheard of, just very unusual. Ichigo protested, what are you talking about? Your powers aren't just borrowed anymore. You're a real Shinigami now, and you'll have to come back with me. Stop joking. I'm serious. I have a family, Rukia. I have a life. I'm alive. He pointed to the closet. Suddenly, soft sounds emerged from the closet, competing with the music from downstairs. Ichigo opened the door, and they were shocked by what they saw. Rukia exclaimed, bad chappie. You do not do that with my jigai. That's my body. Ichigo shouted. Kon, I'm going to kill you. You did it too, Kon muttered. Later, they sat on the roof in their Shinigami forms, gazing at the moon. Rukia's jigai had deflated into a small ball that fit into a bag at her waist. You don't need it anymore? Ichigo asked. I can get spirit food from Urahara-san. Who? I'll introduce you. He has good candy. I stopped there as soon as I entered your town. Sounds good. The cicadas buzzed, the moon shone brightly, and in their Shinigami forms, they could see stars hidden from human eyes. He felt a strong urge to put an arm around Rukia's shoulder and pull her close, but he knew that was not something he would do. I'm not going to Soul Society with you to pretend I'm dead. So what do we do instead? Rukia replied, given that this is likely your permanent state, I'll need to teach you more about controlling and hiding your Ryatsu, so you don't attract hollows or accidentally harm humans. That can happen? He asked, surprised. Yes. We'll go to Urahara's tomorrow after you're done with school. He might have a gadget to help. After school? What about you? Some of Kuchiki Rukia's family troubles were resolved, and her aunt came to pick her up tonight. It was sudden, and she was sad to leave, but happy to go. Just tell the people at school that you saw me leave in a nice car driven by my aunt, a cool-looking businesswoman. Ichigo nodded. Making sure they don't worry. I simply don't wish to cause a fuss. Sure. Rukia continued, there's no sense in causing unnecessary concern. Ichigo snorted. You've known them for over a month. It'd be strange if you weren't at least a little attached. I'm not attached. A little, he insisted. Looking at him coldly, Rukia replied, an appropriately minimal amount. So no worries about leaving Karakura? I'm not leaving. I'll be going to and from home a lot, but I'll try to make sure this assignment lasts a long time. Definitely at least until you can control your powers better. Now put your Zanpakuto across your lap like so. I'm going to teach you Jinzen. The key to controlling your powers is communicating with your Zanpakuto and sealing that cleaver. The door to the cozy shop chimed as two Shinigami entered. The orange-haired one had a large but otherwise unremarkable sword sheathed on his back. The black-haired woman said, a one-armed middle-aged man dressed in black. Yeah. Why do you think that's so strange? It's not strange, it's just not what Yuki-chan said. Maybe he looked different to Yuki-chan. I guess. She shrugged and focused on the shop owner, who had a fan covering his mouth. Urahara-san, I'm hungry. What do you have? Urahara Kisuke, hiding his surprise behind the fan, said, Kuchiki-san, your powers are back. Yep. Your jigai worked great. She gave him a thumbs up and tossed a small black silk pouch to him. Don't need it anymore, though. Urahara said, and you've grown. You're imagining things. I've always been this tall. I took your measurements for the jigai. You're imagining things, she insisted. How about that food? Urahara hesitated, looking at Ichigo. And who's this? Rukia introduced him. This is Kurosaki Ichigo, a kohai of mine. There's a lot of activity here, so he's been sent to help. He's strong, but I can't believe they let him graduate the academy with his skills. Do you know a place for me to whip him into shape? A kohai? Urahara said, raising an eyebrow. I wondered if he might be human. What is that supposed to mean? Rukia asked, tapping her foot, while Ichigo looked offended behind her. Just that I thought you had lost your powers because you'd given them to a human. Rukia's voice turned sharp. Hey, I owe you one, but don't be insulting. I told you I killed a hollow with strange powers, and I've been taking down other hollows since then with Kido. I just hid my situation because I didn't want to look weak in front of my brother. If I did, he'd never let me go on a solo mission again. That's all. But I'm fine now. Urahara said, but it seems like you and Kurosaki-san have intermixed reiatsus. She froze. Don't worry, Kuchiki-san, hardly anyone but me would notice. But how did that happen? Rukia took Ichigo's arm and looked down, only partially hiding the blush on her cheeks. Oh, you know, this and that. She raised her gaze, now serious, and said, I trust you won't mention this to anyone. Especially not my brother. Of course not, Urahara replied, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. How would I even meet your honored brother? Sorry for insulting you, my mistake. Kurosaki-san, that's a mighty big zanpakuto you have. It almost looks like a Shikai. Ichigo explained, it's a sealed form. Rukia-senpai wants me to make it smaller. Yes, so good to see such a well-respected Shinigami as Kuchiki-san taking good care of a kohai. Urahara turned the candy bar around, looking at the label on the back. Oh. This is expired, so sorry for nearly troubling you with expired goods. He tossed it in a trash can and opened the fridge behind him. A minute later, sitting at a small table in the corner, Ichigo and Rukia each had an onigiri, a chocolate bar, and milk. It wasn't a lot of food, but Ichigo felt stuffed. Soul food, made from spirit particles, was filling. Rukia had said a little went a long way. Rukia said, so, Urahara-san, about that training space. Urahara led them into a vast underground desert landscape, explaining that he liked digging, and with real estate so expensive in Japan, it was an economical way to get a nice yard, an explanation neither of them believed. Rukia said, Urahara-san, we'd like some privacy. Lounging on a rock, Urahara said, and I'd like a show. Rukia replied, we plan to show our Shikais, which means this is private. Division 13 members only. Kurosaki-san, you're part of Division 13. Do you like it? Urahara asked. Ichigo recalled what Rukia had told him earlier. For a division with no vice-captain and a chronically sick captain, it's pretty good. My, Urahara said, intrigued. I'll leave you two to your privacy. He climbed back up the ladder and closed the trapdoor, leaving them alone in the underground desert. Rukia said, I can't stay here long. I need to patrol. But I want to show you what a Shinigami is, here, where we don't have to worry. She drew her zanpakuto. Ichigo said, hey, shouldn't we be using practice swords? These are zanpakuto, Ichigo, not swords, and we've learned their names. They won't cut what we don't want to cut. Ichigo drew his Zanpakuto, which had changed slightly since Rukia had first stabbed him, but was largely the same. The gold on the hilt had turned white. "Ready?" Rukia asked. Ichigo nodded. Rukia vanished, and Ichigo hit the dirt, Rukia behind him, lowering her leg from the hit. "What was that?" Ichigo exclaimed, pushing himself to his feet and spitting dirt out of his mouth. "That was Shunpa," Rukia explained. "Maybe I'll teach you later," Rukia said with a playful smile. "No more Shunpa until you've taught me," Ichigo replied, determination in his voice. "Sure." Rukia darted forward, relying solely on her speed. Ichigo barely managed to block her attack in time. When their Zanpakuto clashed, she pushed him back, sending him to the ground once more. "You're strong," Ichigo said as he got back up. "Ready?" she asked, and he nodded. Rukia moved in again, this time focusing on technique rather than overwhelming him with strength and speed. She skillfully worked his blade high and low, landing light strikes on his ribs and cheek. Backpedaling, Ichigo winced from a superficial cut. "Shouldn't you be clumsy from getting taller?" "This is me being clumsy." "You've done some Zanjutsu before," she replied. "Kendo," Ichigo said. "I stopped because I didn't think I'd ever actually be carrying a sword around in real life. Guess I am now." "I told you, these are not swords. They're Zanpakuto. Use your Shikai." "You said it told you how." Ichigo raised his Zanpakuto. "Protect stuff, Zangetsu." The sword transformed. The long ribbon wrapping around his arm, and his Ryatsu surged. Rukia laughed. "Protect stuff. Stuff. It's what Zangetsu wants," he defended, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Couldn't you just say, protect?" she teased. "He wants the stuff part," Ichigo admitted sheepishly. "What's yours?" "Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki." Her sword turned pure white and a white ribbon extended from the hilt, similar to his but shorter. Her Ryatsu intensified, causing the temperature in the underground desert to drop. "It's pretty," Ichigo remarked. Rukia nodded. "Different Shikai have different abilities. Look at yours. Tell me what you see." Ichigo examined his blade. "It's long, so I should have good reach. It's big and heavy, which could help me against hollows. There's no guard, but the base is broad enough that I don't think I need one." "Your Zanpakuto is weighted more toward the bottom," Rukia explained. "That affects your leverage. You want your strikes to have the weight of the blade behind them, so learn how that feels. It's broad enough to be used as a shield. And the long ribbon isn't just for decoration, there's something you can do with it. Everything else, you'll have to learn from Zangetsu." Ichigo asked, "What does yours do?" "Don't come too close," she warned. She swept her blade in a half circle, and the ribbon completed the motion. The ground beneath her turned white as she leaped away, calling out, "Some no mai, Tsukishiro." A massive pillar of clear ice rose up, reaching the ceiling and leaving Ichigo in awe. Rukia explained, "Hakuren does something similar, but the ice pillar is horizontal instead of vertical. There are others I prefer to keep up my sleeve." Ichigo said, "If you're this strong, how come you lost to that hollow?" "I wouldn't have if someone hadn't been distracting me," she replied. "You still should have killed it quickly." "I should have," she admitted. "But that night was strange. I didn't hear the hollows, and I just wasn't right. You remember when I cut its arm? My strike should have severed it, but it didn't. I felt like I had a limiter on. I guess I was sick, but I'm all better now." In truth, she felt stronger. Her Ryoryoku and Ryatsu seemed higher than ever, and she sensed others more acutely. Performing Shunpa felt easier, and controlling her Ryatsu outside her body was simpler than before. Perhaps these perceptions were influenced by the contrast between feeling powerless and returning to her normal self. Or maybe losing and regaining her powers was an effective training method, albeit an extreme one. There was no need to share that with Ichigo. Urahara Kisuke adjusted his hat, a familiar position for deep thought. He missed having a certain black cat around for advice, but Yoruichi had been away for years, gathering intelligence in soul society. This changed everything or perhaps hardly anything. It was hard to say. Despite his efforts to keep Kuchiki Rukia under the radar, she was stronger than ever. He had planned to intervene when a hollow attacked her, but she had unexpectedly chosen to give her powers to Ichigo, creating new challenges and opportunities. Now that she had her powers back, he considered whether to remove the Hogyoku from her and hide it elsewhere. The Hogyoku emitted a unique energy that could only be muffled within a soul, and he suspected Aizen had connections to many of the sensors set up by Division 12 and the Kido Corps. If the Hogyoku wasn't safely hidden, Aizen might find it. He feared Aizen had identified Rukia as the one he had hidden the Hogyoku in decades ago. If Aizen knew, he should move it; if not, he could trust Rukia as a strong unwitting guardian, with Kuchiki Byakuya protecting her. And then there was Kurosaki Ichigo. Ichigo had always been an unknown variable, but now, with his Shikai, he was almost certainly an ace. The connection between Rukia and Ichigo had deepened, she was taller, and their Ryatsu intertwined. Something significant had happened. His monitoring instruments suggested their Zanpakuto had been communicating during their spar. Perhaps he should trust that connection, the wild card that Aizen could never anticipate, a card Kisuke himself could not fully assess. He decided to keep a close watch and remain open to possibilities. With her powers restored, Rukia had informed Ichigo that he didn't have to Konso Plus or purify hollows. His only responsibility was to learn to control his Ryatsu to avoid causing problems. Yet, here he was in Shinigami form, standing above the river, fiddling with his necklace and bracelet black beaded jewelry Rukia had bought from Urahara. Rukia had noted that wearing them reduced his leaking Ryatsu by nearly half, with only a minor impact on his Ryoryoku. This meant he had to improve his Ryatsu control, which didn't sit well with him. He preferred being in his Shinigami form over his human body. It felt lighter, faster, and stronger. His senses heightened, Ichigo felt as if he could stand on the air itself. Re-entering his human body was like wearing a heavy suit that didn't belong to him, complete with sunglasses and earplugs. He was also burdened by the tasks of a Shinigami. Throughout his life, he had seen ghosts seeking his help, but he had been powerless to assist them. As a Shinigami, however, he found it easy to send souls to Soul Society, something he deemed more worthwhile than anything he had done before meeting Rukia. Just half an hour ago, he had helped a worried woman, concerned about her daughter's future. Now, he was waiting, trying to sense the entrance of a hollow, eager to reach it before Rukia did. He didn't truly want to fight a hollow, but he was curious about what it would be like to battle one with Zangetsu. Earlier, Rukia had dealt with a hollow in town, efficiently dispatching it with her skills. Ichigo knew she was determined to never underestimate an enemy again after her earlier encounter. When the presence of a hollow appeared nearby, he felt a surge of excitement. Although he wished he could shunpa to it, he had only seen Rukia perform the technique and hadn't mastered it himself. Instead, he ran as fast as he could, drawing his Zanpakuto. A fast human could cover half a mile in 2 minutes, but Ichigo managed it in about 20 seconds. The hollow he encountered was small and crab-like, moving awkwardly along the sidewalk. With determination, he called out to Zangetsu, and the blade transformed, wrapping around his arm. He could have easily taken the hollow out with a single blow from behind, as Rukia had advised, but he wanted to confront it directly. Dropping in front of the hollow, he swung his blade. It raised a pincer to defend itself, but Zangetsu cut through it effortlessly. Ichigo pierced the hollow's mask and twisted the blade, revealing a chubby middle-aged woman whose face was twisted in fear and misery. As she screamed, he raised Zangetsu high and struck down, delivering a decisive blow. The hollow dematerialized, and before her soul departed for Soul Society, Ichigo saw her expression transform from fear to peace. He felt a profound sense of relief, knowing he had saved her from suffering. "I want to keep being a Shinigami," Ichigo admitted to himself, uncertain of what that meant for him. Ichigo's Ryatsu had intertwined with Rukia's, creating a bond that was undeniable. She had not changed in height, but her Ryatsu had shifted dramatically. She planned to return to Soul Society soon but decided to stay a little longer, knowing it was an emotional day for Ichigo due to his mother's death anniversary. It was challenging to maintain control over one's Ryatsu during such times. As the Kurosakis held their small ceremony, Rukia sensed no hollows in Karakura town. She found a plus near a statue, while Ichigo prepared to gather his sisters. She noticed Karen approaching a strangely dressed girl who felt neither human nor spirit. Rukia quickly moved closer, sensing danger as a well-known hollow, Grand Fisher, appeared behind the girl. She wanted to eliminate it immediately, but a tentacle shot toward Karen, and she didn't know its intent. Mid-Shuanpa, Rukia activated her Shikai and cut through the tentacle, then swiftly sliced through the hollow's lure. Her eyes met Ichigo's, and without words, they understood each other. Ichigo needed to get his family to safety, and if necessary, he would return to help. Frustrated, he grabbed his sisters and fled. The Grand Fisher laughed, taunting Ichigo. Rukia whispered a command, causing ice to spread through the ground, freezing one of the hollow's legs. As it screamed and leaped away, Rukia quickly moved behind it, delivering a precise strike that caused it to disintegrate into spirit particles. Suddenly, Rukia noticed a figure stepping out from behind a tree, a Shinigami in Onmitsukido uniform, his face covered, and a sun hat on his head. An unexpected check-in from the Onmitsukido had arrived earlier than she anticipated. She could easily talk her way out of this situation, but if Ichigo showed up, everything would go wrong. The story she told Urahara would work with any Shinigami, but someone like Ichigo would likely check the records for a Shinigami from Division 13 named Kurosaki Ichigo. It was his job. Her mouth dried, and her heart raced. Ichigo had to stay away. Good afternoon. I'm Saito Aikichiro. You're Kuchiki Rukia, correct? He glanced from her to a picture in his hands. In the picture, you're shorter. I grew. You're quite efficient against such a famous hollow. You're even greater than I'd heard. Thanks. Why haven't you reported in? I've been sending in reports, she protested. And I've been performing all my duties. I just haven't been returning to Soul Society. Why is that? For a while, our instruments couldn't sense your Ryatsu. But you suddenly reappeared the other day. She looked around, took a step closer, and lowered her voice. Can you keep a secret? Depends on the secret. I got injured. Not life-threatening, but almost. My brother can be very overprotective. If he knew, he'd probably tell me I can't go solo again until I've achieved Bankai or something ridiculous like that. She revealed a small section of her clothing, showing the faint remnants of scarring from when the hollow had injured her. Scarring she could have healed, but hadn't, for this very reason. I'm almost fully recovered now. I thought I'd go back for my check-in tomorrow. And your Ryatsu? She shifted uncomfortably. After I was injured, I hid my Ryatsu as best I could and sheltered in a jigai, only leaving to help plus and purify hollows. But I'm all better now. Saito nodded. I'll tell my superior. You can't tell them. Relax. My supervisor isn't going to run to Captain Kuchiki Byakuya. Just come back tomorrow and think about what you're going to tell Captain Kuchiki about your absences. I'll be sure to. One more thing. It looked like that boy and his dark-haired sister could see the hollow in us. Maybe. If there are psychics here, that's not my problem. It felt like the boy had a pretty firm handle on his spiritual powers. So much the better, Rukia replied. He won't cause problems that way. Saito smiled. True. Ciao. He walked into the trees, and Rukia noticed he hadn't activated Senkaman. She shunpoed toward the cemetery's entrance, finding Ichigo and his family together. Careful to avoid eye contact, she stopped in a tree in front of Ichigo, letting him see she was fine, shaking her head as she did. She shunpoed away, resolving not to return to Ichigo until the next morning. When she felt the Senkaman activate behind her, she made no adjustments to that decision and took a wide circuit around Karakura town, looking for likely places where a plus might be missed. The next morning, Rukia entered the Karakura household while they were at breakfast. Yuzu and Isshin gave no sign of noticing her, but Karen's eyes fixed on her for an instant before moving away. Rukia was nearly sure that Karen could see her and was only pretending not to. But she would deal with that later. Ichigo stood abruptly, saying he had to get something from his room. She followed him up the stairs to his room. Shutting the door behind them, Ichigo asked, "Did you kill that hollow?" "I purified it." "What was with the girl's spirit?" "You sliced her in half." "That hollow was the Grand Fissure. It's famous, a bit powerful, and very clever. It uses something that looks like a plus as bait. Any humans who see it are worth eating. The girl was that bait, just a piece of the hollow, so when it was near, I struck." "I see." He frowned, and anger rolled off him in waves. "If you're mad, don't be silent. Say it. I've seen that hollow before. The day my mother died." Rukia clapped a hand over her mouth. "I never knew why falling that little ways had hurt her like that. But now I guess it was that hollow." He rubbed his eyes, but there were no tears. "Ichigo, I wish I'd been the one. But if it had to be someone else, I'm glad it was you. And it won't hurt anyone ever again." For the first time, Rukia felt as if she'd done something good by loaning him her powers. If it ate my mother, does that mean she was still somewhere inside it? Most likely. If so, then your mother has been freed and placed once more into the cycle of reincarnation. He turned away, wiping his face with his sleeve. "If you wish to talk, I will listen." Voice rough, still facing away, he said, "Maybe sometime." "What else happened?" "You beat the hollow pretty quick, right, but then there was something else. An Onmitsukido member checked up on why I've been staying in the human world. Lucky you didn't come back while I was talking to him." "Wasn't luck," he replied. "I knew you didn't want me to come back. It felt like you were glaring at the back of my head." "Is that a Shinigami thing? Psychic communication?" "Not normally. Maybe sensing your comrade's intentions is an ability of Zangetsu." Rukia said, "Ichigo, I'm going back to Soul Society tomorrow. I should only be gone a day or two, but Soul Society will send a reliever to take my place. You can't let the reliever see you in Shinigami form. So just don't become a Shinigami. Keep your Ryatsu hidden, and let the reliever take care of the hollows." "Got it." Rukia stopped first at Division 13 headquarters, where Kentaro and Kion made a fuss about her growth and told her the captain was feeling healthy and was away in District 60 of Rukongai, overseeing a transfer and looking for hollows to deal with. They hadn't been allowed to come along because someone had to look after headquarters. She answered 100 questions about her height, grabbed a few useful books for Ichigo, and after checking in with her own division, she went to Division 6 headquarters. If she knew Onie-sama, he was quietly anxious about how long she'd been away. Division 6 headquarters was more orderly than Division 13's. Dust and disorder were not allowed, unlike Division 13 headquarters, which had its own charm. The Division 6 headquarters had an air of comfort, as if it were a place where people felt at home. Rukia approached the guard, who informed her that Captain Kuchiki was inside. Although she wasn't a master at sensing Ryatsu, she could easily detect her brother's presence, especially since he wasn't trying to hide it. She found Byakuya in the first Kido practice yard, demonstrating techniques to a man with red hair who had his back turned to her. Byakuya was saying, "Spend time here. Set an example by improving on your weaknesses." The red-haired man grunted in agreement, a sound that felt oddly familiar. As Byakuya turned to face him, Rukia could only imagine the slight arch of his brow. The redhead replied, "Yes, Captain Kuchiki," and that voice was unmistakable. "Renji?" Rukia exclaimed, surprised. Both men turned to her, and Renji looked astonished, while Byakuya's only sign of surprise was a slight widening of his eyes. "Who are you?" Byakuya asked. Rukia bowed slightly. "Onie-sama, it's me, Rukia. I don't look that different, do I?" She felt taller, but that was about it. Byakuya tested her knowledge. "Which tea do I despise at breakfast?" "Oolong," she replied quickly. "And what's the name of my favorite koi, and why?" "Blackie. Because Vice Captain Yachiru spilled special ink on him that won't come off. Blackie is your favorite because he slapped Yachiru hard enough that she dropped him." Rukia realized that her changes had startled her brother enough that he needed confirmation of her identity. "Your presence has shifted subtly," he noted. "Yes. Sodi no Shirayuki and I had a meaningful conversation," she explained. Byakuya's gaze traveled up her body, making her uncomfortable since he rarely looked at her directly. "The tailors will measure you for a new wardrobe." She was about to protest but remembered that her civilian clothing needed to be stylish and perfectly fitted. "Explain your excessive absence," he ordered. "It was nothing. I became too caught up in the mission. It won't happen again." Byakuya nodded, accepting her explanation without further questioning, especially in front of Renji. Renji stepped forward, bowed, and introduced himself. "Kuchiki-san, I'm Vice Captain ABA-. Shut up, Renji, you don't think I remember you?" Rukia interrupted. "I wanted to introduce myself as a Vi-. As a Vice Captain. Congratulations, big man." She clapped mockingly, which caused Renji's expression to fall. Rukia mentally cursed herself. She had hardly spoken to anyone but Ichigo for weeks and had slipped into a more casual tone with Renji, who was more sensitive to such teasing. "Really," she said, trying to recover. "Congratulations. It's a big accomplishment. How long have you been a vice captain?" "First day," he replied, nervously fingering the badge on his shoulder. "I've gotten a lot stronger since we saw each other last." With Ichigo, she would have joked about her own strength, but she held back. Instead, she said, "Be pretty weak if you hadn't," realizing that wasn't quite right either. She glanced away from Renji, noting that Byakuya was watching them closely. "Onie-sama, Renji and I were friends in Rukongai and at the academy for a time. Then perhaps a spar between friends," Byakuya suggested. Rukia blinked, not truly surprised. It was a test for both her and Renji. She wasn't seated, which meant Renji might underestimate her. She considered letting him win to spare him embarrassment on his first day. "But Captain, this won't be a fair spar. What if I hurt her?" Renji protested. Rukia was ready to prove herself. "As vice captain, you are expected to train with division members of all skill levels," Byakuya replied. Renji hesitated. "Here in the Kido training area? Do you believe it would be damaged in the fight?" "Nah, I'll be careful. If it gets damaged at all, I'll fix it myself." Byakuya nodded, a small hint of amusement on his lips. Rukia felt grateful, he didn't like Renji overlooking her capabilities either. Rukia drew her Zanpakuto, and Renji did the same. Instead of using a risky move, she took a solid guard and waited. Renji attacked with a powerful downstroke. Rukia deflected, stepped back, and moved, but he blocked her attempt, trying to overpower her. Instead of holding her ground, she retreated and sidestepped, keeping the spar dynamic as she matched his movements. Despite her smaller stature, she had worked hard to overcome that disadvantage. Now, standing at about 5'8", she felt confident. When their blades locked, Rukia pushed forward, her Ryatsu rising, forcing Renji to backpedal. With him on the defensive, Rukia took the opportunity to slip her left hand off the hilt. Bakudo number dash. Desperate, Renji called out, "Howl!" "For Hainawa," she shouted, summoning the crawling rope. "Zabamaru," he countered, and his Zanpakuto transformed into a broad, jagged form. It shot forward, breaking her Kido and forcing her to Shuunpa away. As she regained her stance, Rukia responded, "Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki," her blade turning white as the ribbon extended. Though they were still at a distance, Renji swung, and Zabumaru lashed out like a whip. Rukia parried, but the force pushed her back. "Jlluh," she commanded, sending frost up Zabumaru, freezing its movements. Renji cursed as he felt the chill. With a swift step, Rukia closed the distance, her blade poised against Renji's neck. His eyes widened in surprise as she declared, "Yield." Swallowing his frustration, Renji admitted, "I yield." Rukia sheathed Shirayuki and bowed first to Renji, then to her brother. "Onie-sama, I have been working hard," Rukia stated, her determination evident. Byakuya nodded in acknowledgement, and after years of being by his side, she could see he was pleased. Renji had just shattered the thin layer of ice that had formed on his hand, and he let go of the hilt, which remained stuck due to the frost. Rukia reflected on her actions. She had used her Zanpakuto in a way that was unconventional but effective. "Renji, give me your hand." "I can heal," she began, but Renji interrupted, insisting he would go to one of the Division 4 healers. He shook his hand vigorously, and layers of skin came off with the hilt as it clattered to the ground. With a thought, he returned it to its sealed form, the ice coating it even thicker than before. Wincing, he picked up Zabumaru by the pommel and asked, "Captain, may I be excused?" Byakuya waved him away, and he hurried off. Byakuya turned to Rukia, inquiring, "How cold was that ice?" "I am unsure, Onie-sama. I wanted it cold enough to win, but not so cold as to harm him. I believe it may have been around 40 or 50 degrees below by the time it reached him. On the blade itself, it would have been colder." Seeing that this pleased him, Rukia decided to take a chance. "Onie-sama, since I have just defeated your vice-captain, I wondered if you might reconsider our previous conversation about your request to Captain Yukitake regarding my seated position." Byakuya's expression shifted slightly. Rukia quickly drew Sodi no Shirayuki, but the tip of Byakuya's Zanpakuto was already pressed against her back, her own blade still in motion, unable to parry in time. She froze, and Byakuya stated, "When you can block my Senka, then I will reconsider my request." Rukia knew she was getting closer to that goal. "Yes, Onie-sama," she replied. Byakuya then asked, "I have heard that you defeated the Grand Fisher. Tell me about your assignment." Rukia shared her experiences, careful to omit details that might lead him to want her reassigned, all the while counting the hours until she could return to Karakura town. Meanwhile, Aizen was feeling confident, believing he had Urahara cornered. Urahara underestimated Aizen's resources, unaware that he had become king of Hueco Mundo and had extensive surveillance in place. Aizen knew everything happening on the game board, including Rukia's growth and changes in her Ryatsu, which seemed influenced by the Hogyoku. He pondered whether Urahara had used the Hogyoku on Rukia without detection or if it had never been in her possession at all. Uncertainty lingered, and Aizen chose to wait, knowing Urahara had his own countermeasures and devices designed to eliminate him. As Aizen observed, he noted the Kurosaki boy's development of Shinigami powers mere weeks after facing a hollow. This intrigued him, and he decided to send more hollows to test both Rukia and Ichigo. In another scene, Rukia rushed to Ichigo's bedroom window after reclaiming the area from the reliever. Ichigo looked up from his homework, setting it aside. "Any problems?" he asked. She sat on the bed, careful not to dwell on their past. "No problems. I saw my comrades in Division 13, sparred with an old friend, and lunched with Onie-sama." She recalled the formal tea room and Byakuya's distant demeanor. "Onie-sama?" Ichigo asked. "He's a captain, one of Soul Society's 13 greatest Shinigami," Rukia explained. "He's still your brother. You can call him that." Ichigo teased. "And he's the head of House Kuchiki," she added. "House Kuchiki?" Ichigo inquired. "It's one of the 4 great noble houses," Rukia replied. Ichigo bowed dramatically. "Welcome to my humble abode, Ojo-sama. Can this peasant get you anything?" Shut up, Rukia laughed. Never pegged you for a rich girl, Ichigo remarked. I wasn't born a rich girl, she clarified. I was adopted. How'd that happen? He asked, surprised. It's not uncommon for nobles to adopt accomplished individuals, she explained, feeling the weight of expectations that came with it. Changing the subject, Rukia asked, did the reliever see you? Afro-san. Nah, I kept my distance. He handled the hollows, just small fry from what I could tell. I helped a couple of pluses when I was sure he wasn't around, Ichigo replied. That's dangerous, Ichigo. You could have been seen. Pluses can wait, she cautioned. He shrugged, pulling the hilt of his zanpakuto from his chest in its sealed form. I didn't pull Zangetsu all the way out, just enough to do Konso. Kuroasan said I could do this. Even if Afro-san saw, he wouldn't understand. Back up, Rukia said, surprised. Zangetsus? And who is Kuroasan? Ichigo asked. I did more Jinzen while you were gone, came the response. Still in human form, Ichigo lay on his bed, eyes closed, breathing deeply, trying to lull himself into a meditative state. Rukia had instructed him on how to perform Jinzen: close your eyes, and keep closing them until you find yourself somewhere else. Then, open them. As he followed her guidance, Ichigo felt a breeze brush against his face, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a sideways world of blue skyscrapers. He had been there before but felt steadier this time, certain he could remain until he chose to leave. A middle-aged man in black stared at him through tinted sunglasses. Hey, Zangetsu. Do you have a favorite color? Ichigo asked. The man remained silent. Rukia said I should get to know you better. I hope it's blue. I do not have such a thing as a favorite color, he replied. Right. Tell me about yourself. Rukia mentioned her zanpakuto saw a white version of me down here. What's that about? Behind the man's sunglasses, his eyes widened. His cloak seemed to dissolve into dust, while his coat remained unchanged, though the white half of his sword flowed away. The dust collected and formed a second Ichigo. This new Ichigo had skin and hair that were dead white. The whites of his eyes were black, his pupils white, and his irises icy blue. His shihakusho was white, adorned with a subtle snowflake motif, and a platinum crown rested on his head. He wielded a white, triangular cleaver of a sword. Yo! You called, the crowned Ichigo said. You're the one Sodi no Shirayuki talked to? Ichigo asked. The crowned Ichigo grinned widely, revealing a mouth that was black. Yuki-chan and I did a lot more than talk. As without, so within. You mean? Ichigo's face flushed. You should reconnect with Rukia again. Maybe then Yuki-chan and I will get more alone time. Who are you? Ichigo asked, bewildered. I'm hurt, King. Don't you recognize me? I'm Zangetsu. I'm your power. Then what about him? Ichigo pointed to the old man. How should I know if you don't? I was only born a little while ago. Seems like he's Zangetsu too. Ah, said the old man. We are both your power. We are one being, yet distinct. The crowned Ichigo smirked. And this one's been trying to hog your attention, I can tell you that. A-hole. The black-cloaked Zangetsu tightened his grip on his sword. You want to go, old man? It is not fitting that we should fight. But if you present yourself as an enemy, I will not hesitate to strike you down. So you can put more than 3 words in a sentence, old man. Good to know. Let's find out how much force you can put into a swing. That's enough. Ichigo interjected, and they stopped. Even if you're different, you're both a part of me. It'll probably give me a headache if you fight. Che, said the white Ichigo, lowering his sword. I'll let you off this time, old man, but if you try to suppress me again, I really will take you down. And I'm the real Zangetsu. I am also Zangetsu, the old man insisted. The crowned Ichigo raised his sword again. Don't fight, Ichigo said. Fine, you're both Zangetsu. But you probably need your own names too. He looked at the black one. How about Kuroasan? Kuroasan inclined his head. Pfft, Ichigo said. You're as bad as Chad. He turned to the white one. You could be Shiro-san. Shiro-chan, he replied. Chan is cooler. It's the contrast with how scary I am. Shiro-chan then, Ichigo said. When I want Shikai, how should I call you both? Shiro-chan said, I'd be fine with cool Zangetsu only. But Zangetsus would work. As Rukia watched, Ichigo declared, watch. Reign over all creation, Shiro-chan Zangetsu. He pulled an almost pure white sword with black wrappings and ribbon from his body, resembling the full form but half as wide. Now this one. Protect stuff, Kuroasan Zangetsu, he called, drawing out a black sword with white wrappings and ribbon, similar in shape to the white one but slightly shorter. Cool, right? Hey, what's wrong? You're looking at me weird. Rukia replied, it's unusual. I can only think of two people with a dual-wield Shikai. And they were both captains. It doesn't have to be dual-wield, he said. Zangetsus, collaborate. The two Zanpakuto joined into one, black on top of white, their hilts merging without crushing his fingers. The long ribbon was white on top and black on the bottom. Split up, he commanded, and the Zanpakuto split into two. Collaborate, he instructed, and they came together again. Split up. Collaborate. Split up. Collaborate. Finding her voice, Rukia said, you've been working hard. There wasn't much to do. Watch this. With a wisp of fog, the Shikai reduced to its sealed form, which Rukia noticed was significantly smaller than before, resembling a thin odachi instead of his previous form. Protect our reign, Zangetsus. The massive black and white cleaver reappeared in his hands. And that's how I summon both at once. They agreed to it as a compromise. A compromise release command, she said faintly. Shiro-chan wanted, protect all the parts of creation we like, but that's way too long and sounds bad. You seem excited, she observed, noting his effusive, childlike mood, something she hadn't seen from him before. It's nice. Knowing they're there. Scary, with Ichigo aware of their presence. She had only been gone 2 days, but Ichigo's Ryatsu with the blockers on was as high as it had been before with them off. This meant he was rapidly reaching the power level of a vice-captain. Without something like a limiter affecting his spiritual energy, Ryatsu blockers could only do so much. But finesse helped. I got 2 books for you, Rukia said, placing them on his desk next to his homework, careful to prevent them from falling through, as they were made of spirit particles. Ichigo read the titles. The Art of Mastery of Ryuryoku and Ryatsu. And Rules and Regulations. Rukia, I understand the first, but what do I need rules and regulations for? So you won't create any problems and you'll know how to avoid being noticed by Shinigami. And in the worst case, if you're seen in soul form by a Shinigami, you can pretend to be one too. Fake it, huh? I'm not a criminal, Ichigo insisted. I know it's not fair, but Rukia started. I haven't done anything wrong, and you didn't either, he replied. I broke the law, she reminded him. You saved my life, and your life, and my sister's lives, he countered. Hating it doesn't change anything, Ichigo. You have to accept the situation as it is and do what you can. That means you've done enough Jinzen. Don't enter Shinigami form. Don't get any stronger. The stronger you get, the harder it will be for you to keep your Ryatsu at a level where it won't cause problems, and the harder it will be for you to avoid notice. She regretted taking him to Urahara's training basement and teaching him Jinzen. There were other ways to seal a blade. Reflecting on the night they first met, she realized she should have focused on the hollow she was fighting instead of the human talking to her. If she had, neither of them would be in such a mess. If you see a plus, do conso. If you're attacked by a hollow, purify it. Otherwise, leave Shinigami duties to those who have passed on, Rukia instructed. Ichigo frowned. What about Zangetsus? Not getting any stronger and not taking soul form means neglecting them. You told me the relationship between Shinigami and Zanpakuto is sacred, and now you're telling me to pretend they don't exist. I want to get stronger, and I want to be legal, even if it means taking a risk. Is there any way to do that? He asked. Rukia recognized the weight of his words. Asking a Shinigami to deny his Zanpakuto was like asking him to deny his deepest self. When I go back to Siriidii, I'll see what I can do. Rukia was curious about Ghost Hunt, though she didn't fully understand it. It sounded like something a Shinigami should check out, perhaps a human ghost festival. It amused Ichigo when she playfully exclaimed, "Bohahaha." When Ichigo's family decided to attend, Rukia, light in soul form, hopped onto Ichigo's shoulder, joining in the laughter with Yuzu and Isshin. She enjoyed the way Ichigo's cheek twitched in irritation as he tried to shake her off, so she simply moved to his head, pretending to scratch it while he attempted to dislodge her. Leaning closer, she teased, "You're a fun ride, Ichigo." His face turned bright red, and he sputtered in response. Rukia frowned, puzzled by his reaction. Ichigo's friends approached, and instead of looking down at him, Chad squinted up at her. Rukia leaped into a nearby tree, realizing that Chad might be sensitive enough to see her. It was best to stop riding Ichigo for now. Her thoughts halted as she understood why Ichigo had turned red. She hadn't meant it that way. Resolving to avoid referring to it as riding Ichigo again, she decided she was simply standing on him while he walked. As the crowd gathered around the abandoned hospital, a demi-hollow emerged, screaming about inheritance. Rukia gripped her Zanpakuto but chose not to draw it, deciding to handle the situation after the crowd dispersed. The event's announcer declared it was about to begin, and a helicopter flew overhead. A man jumped out, introduced as Don Kananji, cape billowing behind him. "Spirits are always with you," he shouted as his parachute deployed, slowing his descent. Rukia clapped enthusiastically, joining the crowd in their cheers. She was pleased to see that Don Kananji could actually see the ghost. His authenticity made the festival more enjoyable. As he approached the demi-hollow, Rukia watched in alarm as he struck the spirit with his staff, aggravating its condition and threatening to turn it into a true hollow. Without hesitation, she shunpoed to the demi-hollow's side, knocked the staff away, and grabbed the spirit by the neck. With another shunpa, she created distance, her Zanpakuto in hand, and delivered a swift konso to the demi-hollow. Turning to face Don Kananji, she scolded him fiercely, causing him to tear up as several of Ichigo's friends began to see the blurry image of the source of the commotion. Back in Siriidii, Rukia found herself in Captain Yukate's office, where he looked unusually healthy. She felt a wave of nervousness wash over her, reminiscent of her first week in the division. "Kuchiki-chan. You really did get taller. And stronger too," he remarked with a smile. "Thank you for saying so, Captain," she replied. "Nonsense. It's the responsibility of captains to notice their subordinates' improvements." "What happened?" he inquired. "It's just that Sodi no Shirayuki and I have become closer," she said, knowing that the relationship between Shinigami and Zanpakuto was a private matter. "Captain, I wonder if we could speak privately," she suggested. With a nod and a curious look, Yukatake led her to a back room and sealed it with Kido. Sitting formally on the rug, she folded her hands and, with a slightly high-pitched voice, asked, "Captain Yukatake. I have a random, silly question for you." "Ask it," he encouraged, smiling reassuringly. "Hypothetically speaking, suppose a human awakened Shinigami abilities while still alive," she posed. Yukatake considered her words. "That doesn't sound possible." "I know. But if it did happen, what could be done?" she pressed. Leaning back in his chair, Yukitake replied, hypothetically speaking, it would depend significantly on the judgment of the captain who first encountered this impossible human Shinigami. If the human Shinigami were inducted into the division, they would be under the nearly inviolate jurisdiction of the captain, accepting a direct order from Central 46. A wise captain would consider not noting his new recruit's origins at all, depending on his evaluation of the hybrid's character. Rukia suggested that if the hybrid were of high character but wished to live out his human life while continuing to purify hollows and conso pluses on the side, a captain could assign him to a quiet town where one part-time Shinigami could handle everything needed. When the hybrid's human life ended, no one would need to know the details of his assignment. Rukia returned from Soul Society and dismissed Afro-san while making her way through Karakura town. Suddenly, she felt a surge of anger, fear, and determination from Ichigo. He seemed wary and frustrated. As she headed toward him, she received an order to deal with a hollow in the park. One hollow after another appeared, and she was astonished by the number of hollows, realizing Ichigo had improved significantly. However, she sensed that someone else was also defeating hollows. Karen was on Chad's shoulders, fleeing from a hollow on a soccer field when Rukia intervened and purified it. She quickly took care of another hollow threatening Orihime. The remaining hollows were gathering in the city center, where Ichigo was fighting fiercely. Rukia needed to reach him before the unknown Shinigami did, as a conversation with another Shinigami could expose Ichigo's secret. Finding Ichigo was easy, and she reached him just as he dispatched multiple hollows with impressive speed. Rukia called out to him, asking what was happening. Ichigo explained that a Quincy had caused the chaos, and Rukia noted that it was just the two of them now. They worked together, defeating hollows in tandem, with Rukia utilizing her skills while Ichigo seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. In the heat of battle, Rukia cast a spell that struck a hollow attacking Ichigo. Suddenly, a boy appeared, dark-haired and thin, wielding a bow of spiritual energy. Rukia realized he was the Quincy responsible for the situation but decided against confronting him for now. As the last of the hollows fled, her phone beeped, indicating a massive hollow approaching a Minos Grande, a Gillian. Rukia warned the Quincy not to attack, knowing his arrows would only provoke the creature. She prepared to face the Gillian, raising her Zanpakuto. Ichigo joined her, combining his blades into a more powerful weapon. Rukia focused her energy, calling upon her Zanpakuto for power, and unleashed her new attack, a massive ice spear that pierced through the Gillian's chest. The creature convulsed and screamed, but it was not yet purified. As it prepared to unleash a powerful attack, Rukia refused to let it harm the town. She invoked another powerful technique, unleashing a wave of cold energy that cut through the Gillian's attack and struck its mask. The creature crumbled into snow, and Rukia felt the relief of thousands of souls being purified. Just then, her phone beeped again, and a Senkaman opened nearby. A tall figure emerged, Zanpakuto at the ready, wearing a white haori and with white hair. Rukia recognized him as the cause of her phone's alert and called out to him, surprised to see a captain. He looked at her with a stern expression, acknowledging her presence. "Was there a Minos here just now?" Ichigo asked, looking around. "A Gillian," Rukia replied. "I purified it." Yukitake raised an eyebrow and grinned. "A Gillian?" "Rukia, well done. It seems there was no need for me to come." He didn't appear bothered at all. Rukia knew this was a perfect excuse for her to visit the human world. Checking her phone for updates, she said, "I think that was the end of the incursion." Yukitake stretched out his hand, and countless ribbons appeared around him, two red and many white. "It seems so," he confirmed. The ribbons faded, and he turned his attention to Ichigo. Rukia laughed nervously. "Ichigo, this is Yukitake Jushiro-sama, captain of Division 13. "Charmed," Ichigo said, lowering his blades cautiously. "A double Shirkia?" Yukitake asked, surprised. "Yeah," Ichigo replied, raising the blades again. "Kuroasan says I should be cautious of you, and Shiro-chan says we should run away until we're stronger. And what do you say?" Yukitake inquired. Charmed, Ichigo repeated. The two blades have different personalities. Ah. And even different names. Nah, they're both Sangetsu. I just gave them nicknames to simplify. Yukitake's gaze shifted to Ishida, who stood still, looking tense. Rukia, was there a particular cause for this incursion? Yukitake asked. Ichigo said the Quincy spread bait, Rukia explained. A Quincy, Yukitake noted. I haven't seen one since Suken-san. That's right, Ichigo said, a bit hesitant. Ishida wanted to compete to see what's better, Shinigami or Quincy's. I thought we'd just fight it out, but he suggested we see who could defeat the most hollows. Then he spread that bait. It'll be a miracle if no pluses got eaten and no humans got hurt. Rukia added, Orihime, Tatsuki, Sato, and your sister Karen were all attacked by hollows. They're fine, but they probably wouldn't be if I hadn't intervened. Ichigo's expression darkened, and Rukia placed a hand on his shoulder to keep him from confronting Ishida. There shouldn't have been that many hollows. The bait shouldn't have worked so well, Ishida said. You know that for a fact? Yukitake asked. Have you used this bait before? No, Ishida admitted. But I know what it's supposed to do. The spiritual density here is remarkable for the human world. You wanted a few, and you started a stampede. Why exactly did you create this challenge? I don't answer to you, Ishida replied defiantly. Do you have anything else to say in your defense? Yukitake pressed. Ishida adjusted his glasses. I have said quite enough. Quincy. You've proven yourself a danger to the humans around you. If no one was killed, we have luck to thank. And you have, for sport, destroyed souls that could have been purified. It is a serious offense. In a flash, Yukitake appeared behind Ishida, who fell to the ground, startled. Rukia caught a glimpse of Yukitake's blade moving swiftly. Captain! Rukia exclaimed. I didn't kill him. I only took his powers. As much as I might like to call it youthful recklessness and let him off, reckless endangerment has consequences. Yukitake looked regretful, but Rukia couldn't disagree. So he'll be okay? Ichigo asked. He will not see spirits anymore. Otherwise, he should be unharmed. Freed, one might say, to live a healthy and happy human life. Yukitake leaned down and whispered something to Ishida, who looked horrified, though the fear began to fade. Standing up, Yukitake said, he will regain control of his body shortly. We should give him his privacy. Yukitake moved away from the park, observing the streets. Like most captains and vice-captains, who had their powers limited when entering the human world, Yukitake didn't often leave Soul Society. Rukia squeezed Ichigo's hand, signaling him to share part of the truth. Captain Yukitake, this is the human I told you about. The one who gained Shinigami powers spontaneously. She hoped Ichigo would follow her lead. Ichigo said, before we get into whatever this will be, I need to check on something. Go ahead, Yukitake replied. Closing his eyes and focusing, Ichigo summoned spirit threads, similar to what Yukitake had done moments before, though with more effort. Yukitake whistled in surprise. Ichigo leaned closer to Rukia, pointing to 3 threads. Karen. Yuzu. Goat Chin. Yuzu's thread overlaps with Goat Chin. They're together, and I think they're far away. And Khan's with Karen. They might be at the house, but I still want to see her. Then lead on, Yukitake encouraged. Ichigo looked at Yukitake, surprised the captain had caught that detail, regretting mentioning his sisters. Rukia smiled, and Ichigo relaxed slightly. He led them toward his house at a steady pace, glancing back at Yukitake nervously. Rukia walked closer to Yukitake and asked, I haven't heard much about Quincy's before. Yukitake looked thoughtfully through the windows of a convenience store. It's not something we like to discuss. The Quincy's were a group of humans who trained to combat hollows. They became skilled fighters, and at first, we were grateful, though confused. But we soon realized that Quincy's don't purify hollows, they destroy them completely. You may have felt it yourself. I did, Rukia admitted, though I didn't understand. Ichigo added, the tingly feeling wasn't there. Yukitake continued, over time, the absence of purified X-hollows not being reborn in Soul Society would disrupt the balance between worlds. Do you understand the implications? Ichigo, recalling his conversations with Rukia, said in a horrified tone, it would all go splat. Splat indeed. Our attempts to find a way for Quincy's to purify hollows were unsuccessful, and the Quincy's themselves were uninterested in that goal. Their reaction to our warnings about interdimensional destruction was disbelief. We requested that they only destroy hollows that attacked them. The system of the worlds could handle that. But they insisted on being aggressive and sought out hollows. Our offer for them to help by guiding pluses to Shinigami was seen as an insult. Central 46 showed unusual patience, but in the end, we had little choice. We made war on the Quincy's. Most were killed. My preferred solution was to strip them of their powers, but that didn't effectively prevent their children from having spiritual powers, and it's possible for them to regain their abilities if they work hard. You can see why this solution was deemed flawed, though it was used on those who surrendered rather than fought. In concert with monitoring devices, Captain Yukitake inquired about how Ichigo gained his Shinigami powers. Ichigo explained that he had always been able to see spirits. A few weeks prior, Rukia had entered his room to help a plus that had followed him home. After a hollow attacked and Rukia saved them, Ichigo shared the locations of other pluses he knew. Rukia mentioned that he was leaking too much Ryatsu and offered to teach him how to control it. Ichigo recalled hearing whispers for a while, and during a meditation session, he had shouted the name Zangetsu. Yukitake sensed there was more to the story. Ichigo, slightly embarrassed, hesitated before admitting that he had not been meditating in the traditional sense when he called out the name. Yukitake, curious, asked if it was a private moment alone or with someone else. Ichigo, feeling uncomfortable, replied that a gentleman doesn't kiss and tell. Yukitake shared that a friend of his had achieved Shikai in a similar manner and suggested that deep connections could help one become more in tune with themselves. Rukia felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Yukitake then asked about Ichigo's parents, to which Ichigo explained that his father could not sense ghosts, but his mother had been able to before her passing. As they walked through Karakura town, their conversation shifted from battles against hollows to Ichigo's experiences at school. Rukia noticed Ichigo was unusually nervous, trying to avoid saying anything offensive. She, too, felt anxious, hoping Yukitake would remain unoffended, which was a challenge since he was known for his calm demeanor. Upon reaching Ichigo's house, he instructed them to wait while he went inside. Yukitake expressed curiosity about Ichigo's human form. Ichigo quickly disappeared into his house and returned shortly, holding his body by the shoulders, with Kon inside. Kon appeared startled at the sight of Yukitake. Ichigo explained how he usually entered his body, mentioning that Rukia often helped him with that. He demonstrated how he could pull his spiritual form out of his physical body, surprising Rukia with his ability. Yukitake noted that Ichigo's eyes were a different color in his spiritual form, which was not unusual for spirits from Soul Society. Rukia understood Yukitake's implication that Ichigo was more like a spirit of Soul Society than just a human with Shinigami powers. Yukitake then asked what Rukia had taught Ichigo, to which he listed various skills, including Ryatsu control and some tactics for fighting hollows. He mentioned that he had picked up a bit of Shunpa. Yukitake requested a demonstration of Shunpa. Ichigo put Kon back in his body and instructed him to stay inside. Then, Ichigo showcased his Shunpa, moving swiftly down the street. Rukia watched in awe as Yukitake praised Ichigo's talent. Yukitake remarked on the uniqueness of Ichigo's abilities, noting that previous humans with Shinigami powers had gained them by absorbing them from a Shinigami. He suggested that Ichigo might be the reincarnation of Shiba Kaien, which shocked Rukia, as she felt Ichigo was not the same person. Yukitake clarified that a reincarnation is not the same as the original person, but it is still a significant connection. Either way, it must have been shocking to see someone who looked so much like Kaien, Rukia reflected. Over the years, she had seen Kaien's features on many people, and it no longer made her heart race. Seeing them all at once on a single person was just a coincidence. Yukitake remarked, "He was the catalyst for your recent changes, wasn't he?" Rukia, thinking on her feet, replied, "I still don't believe he's the reincarnation of Kaien Dano. But spending time with him and acting as his mentor helped me understand Kaien Dano's feelings better, and I was finally able to forgive myself. It's an important step. I'm glad you've managed to overcome it. And Rukia, here's something to consider. Historically, nearly half the Shinigami of the Shibi clan have had a Zanpakuto with a name that included Getsu." With that, Yukitake shunpoed to Ichigo. Ichigo didn't have much time to decide on Captain Yukitake's offer. Missing a week of school wouldn't be ideal, but the chance to visit a different dimension was too enticing to pass up, even if it meant putting his studies on hold. Yukitake explained, "We'll be entering through the Shihoin family Senkamen, which is under my care until the Shihoin can produce a captain-class Shinigami." Ichigo was curious about what a Senkamen was. A method of entering Soul Society, it seemed. "What about Rukia?" he asked. Captain Yukitake replied, "Kuchiki-san will join us in 2 days. It's better that you're not too closely associated with her right now." "And what about Karakura town?" Ichigo inquired. "I'm sending a team to watch over it," Yukitake assured him. He then stabbed his Zanpakuto into the air, and traditional Japanese sliding screen doors appeared, opening into a bright, opaque light. Ichigo must not have been as good at hiding his nerves as he thought, because Rukia said, "It'll be fine. The Senkamen isn't dangerous." Yukitake motioned for Ichigo to go first, and he stepped into the shining light. Ichigo emerged through the Senkamen into a traditional Japanese room with tatami mats and a high ceiling. It looked long abandoned, and his steps disturbed the dust. Yukitake followed him out, and the Senkamen closed behind them, leaving only an empty gate. "Let's go," Yukitake said. Ichigo followed the captain out a side door into a city made of white stone that felt strange to him. "Follow me," Yukitake instructed, shunpoing to the next street corner. Ichigo needed 3 shunpos to reach the corner, feeling slightly out of breath. He was in another dimension, possibly breaking the law, and possibly joining the military. It was overwhelming, and he found it hard to breathe for more reasons than just the physical exertion. What was he doing? Yukitake shunpoed away again, and Ichigo followed. By the time they reached the Division 13 headquarters, Ichigo was red-faced and ready to sit down. Yukitake gave him a moment to catch his breath before leading him inside. They passed various black-robed Shinigami, many practicing, who stood at attention as Yukitake passed until he motioned for them to continue. Ichigo tried to look like he belonged. They arrived at the division's large central office, where a blonde girl who looked about Ichigo's age stood up and bowed. "Welcome back, Captain," she exclaimed. "At ease, Kaion," Yukitake replied. "How's Rukia-chan?" Kaion asked. "In good health and growing stronger every day. Kaion-chan, Kurosaki-kun here needs new paperwork. Quickly, and the fewer questions asked, the better." Kaion nodded, frowning at Ichigo as she went to a closet and pulled out a camera. After Ichigo had his picture taken, Yukitake led him into a back room with cushions, a low table, and shelves of books. "Wait here. The restroom is through that door. I'll be back in an hour or 2, Yukitake said. Ichigo sat down, trying to calm himself. Rukia trusted Yukitake, so he could too. Repeating that thought helped as he grabbed a book and settled in to wait. As he turned the pages, he found himself engrossed in a book about the establishment of the Godiai 13, realizing that Yukitake was quite old. Yukitake returned, closing the door behind him and holding a stack of papers. "Here's your badge," he said, handing Ichigo a ceramic square. It had his picture on the front and identified him as Shinigami Kurosaki Ichigo, Division 13, along with a series of numbers and letters he would need to memorize. Gesturing to the papers on the table, Yukitake said, "Observe the art of paperwork, albeit poorly done." The form was a roster correction form, filled in messily. Ichigo's name and details were legible, but the rest was a mix of clarity and confusion. "Very artistic," Ichigo remarked. "Kaion deserves the credit. She's a paperwork master. Now sign, and infuse your Ryatsu into the seal." As Ichigo complied, Yukitake explained, "The most probable date for your induction is the night Rukia first noticed your powers. Since then, you've been training and assisting. If pressed, you can say you're from Rukongai, but it's better not to mention that. Just look sad and don't answer if anyone asks. As for your education, let people assume you went to the academy, but don't claim it. If necessary, say I inducted you by prerogative, which is true." Integrating into Division 13 was straightforward. At morning assembly, Captain Yukitake welcomed 4 people back from stations in the human world, and Ichigo was one of them. No one questioned it, nor did they note how vague Yukitake had been. Divisions had enough Shinigami that it wasn't unusual not to recognize a comrade, especially if the comrade was low-ranking and had only recently joined. A few of them even claimed to vaguely remember Ichigo, showcasing how deceptive memory could be. His orange hair had always drawn attention, but Siriidii was different from Japan. While most had black or dark brown hair, there were also those with blonde, white, or even exotic colors like green, blue, and purple. Ichigo noticed a few with shades of orange, though not as vibrant as his own. It was a little nice and a little odd to blend in. Training took place in a vast dojo larger than most parks, where they picked up practice shurnai that felt sturdier than bamboo. Ichigo chose one the same length as his sealed Zanpakuto. He was puzzled as to why they weren't using Zanpakuto. When he trained with Rukia, they simply dulled their blades by suppressing their killing intent. As training commenced, Ichigo quickly realized that the rank-and-file Shinigami were not as strong as Rukia. After knocking down his third opponent, he focused on controlling his Ryuryoku, trying to match their level. It required significant concentration, and he eased up to avoid overwhelming them. Even with his strength and speed nearly equalized, he felt the skill gap and decided to dial back his Ryuryoku further to avoid injury. Though he wished for a more challenging opponent, Ichigo found the training beneficial. It allowed him to improve his blade skills and control over his Ryuryoku. After 90 minutes, they stepped outside, legs dangling off the edge of a long porch, sweating and enjoying water while congratulating each other. Ayashima, one of those who claimed to remember Ichigo, remarked, "You've gotten good." "Been working hard," Ichigo replied. "Getting Shikai made a big difference." "Oh, Shikai!" Megumi exclaimed. "Show us." "I'm not sure I." "Show us," another shouted, and soon everyone around him was chanting, "Show, show, show." "All right already," Ichigo said, placing a hand on Zangetsu. "Just give me some space." The Shinigami backed away, and Ichigo drew his Zanpakuto. "Protect our reign, Zangetsu." The crowd gasped as 2 blades appeared. Recently, his Shikai had started out separated, which both Zangetsus preferred. 2 blades. Just like Captains Yukitake and Kuraku. Ichigo waited for the excitement to settle, wondering if he should have demonstrated them as a single blade instead. Shiro-chan urged, "Flare our Ryatsu, Ichigo. Make them all kneel." "Shut up," he thought back. "They feel strong," Ayashima commented. "The black one especially seems ready to cut through anything." "What do they do?" Ichigo explained, "Well, right now, Kuroasan is a bit shy about the attention, while Shiro-chan is soaking it up. But he didn't like how you talked about Kuroasan instead of him." Laughter erupted. "What's your Shirkai's powers?" "I don't know yet. They're different, I can tell. Kuroasan," he lifted the black blade, "has some sort of Kido attack I haven't figured out yet. There's been a blue flash a couple of times. I think I'll have it soon." Shiro-chan, he hefted the white blade, isn't so eager to please, so I have no idea. I told you already. I have the power of a king. Shiro-chan chimed in. Ichigo thought, I need to do a lot more Jinzen. Meanwhile, Rukia continued using Ichigo's house as her base of operations, feeling comfortable there, though not in Ichigo's room due to Khan's antics. Instead, she perched atop a telephone pole outside, contemplating the lies she'd told her captain. Yukitake had noticed every odd detail and pieced them together incorrectly. She sensed Karen leaving the house, likely headed for the park, but to her surprise, Karen stopped at the base of the pole. Samurai ghost lady, she called out. Rukia looked down, realizing Karen had finally acknowledged her presence. Where's Ichigo? Karen asked. Isn't he at your house? Rukia replied. That's not Ichigo. I don't know who he is, and I don't mind him, but he's not Ichigo. No, Rukia agreed, he's not. But Ichigo is fine. He's on a business trip. He'll be back in a week or so. A business trip dealing with those monsters? Karen inquired. No, just paperwork. Almost like a vacation. What are you, exactly? Rukia stepped off the pole, landing gracefully in front of Karen, and bowed. Kuchiki Rukia, Shinigami of Division 13 of the Godai 13, at your service. Kurosaki Karen, the girl replied, blankly. But you already knew that. Shinigami, huh? Does that mean Ichigo is a Shinigami too? Ichigo is very unusual, Rukia explained. He's a Shinigami, but usually, talented people like you and your brother don't become Shinigami until after they die. Ichigo became one while still alive. That's very strange, so for now, we're keeping it a secret. If you meet another Shinigami, you shouldn't mention it. You're dead? Karen asked. That's a complicated question. Shinigami die and become humans. Humans die, and sometimes become Shinigami. In the reincarnation cycle, we're all dead from someone's perspective. As Shinigami, we help guide pluses, what you call ghosts, to the next cycle, and when necessary, we confront hollows. There were a lot of hollows the other day, Karen remarked. A criminal spread hollow bait here. He's been dealt with and shouldn't do that again. What are those monsters anyway? Karen pressed. Rukia explained how pluses turned into hollows, how Shinigami purified them, and that hollows sought to consume pluses and spiritually sensitive humans, like Karen. Always wear the necklace and bracelets Ichigo gave you. They help hide you from hollows, Rukia advised, contemplating whether to guide Karen in controlling her Ryatsu. She decided against it for now. If Karen was anything like Ichigo, she might become unexpectedly powerful. So all I can do is hide? Karen asked. It's my job to make sure you don't have to worry about them. But if you want to help, you can tell me about any pluses you see. If they'll move, you can even drag them here for me to console. I'll be leaving for a few days, though, and you shouldn't approach my replacement. Not that he'd hurt you, but it's generally better not to attract the attention of bureaucracy. What a wonderful message to have to give. There are dangers out there that would love to consume you. You can't stop them, just hope the Shinigami do. But don't trust the Shinigami either. They might be just as bad if you attract their attention. Not for the first time, she wished Siriidii was as kind and just as it liked to pretend to be. Rukia suggested, there's a shop you can go to. The place where Ichigo got that necklace and the bracelets. Maybe the owner has something he could sell you to help keep yourself safe. She imagined that would be a lot safer than training the girl and much less likely to cause trouble. 4 young humans stood in Urahara's small shop. Karen and Inoue could see Hollow's Tatsuki and Chad were on the verge of it, and some strong power was lightly slumbering in Chad. Kisuke thought it would have awakened if Rukia hadn't saved him from the Hollow. Karen came by her abilities naturally, but Inoue, Chad, and, to a lesser extent, Tatsuki, had all been affected by Kurosaki's Ryatsu and by the Hogyoku in Rukia. Decades in Seoul society had done nothing noticeable, but Kuchiki Rukia went to a human school for a few short weeks, and this happened. As Urahara had long suspected, his Hogyoku-chan was more attuned to humans than spirits. Urahara said, "You would all be safer pretending that you know nothing and see nothing. To do otherwise is to enter a war that's been ongoing since long before you were born and will continue long after you are gone. A war in which the villains are as evil as you can imagine, and the heroes are complicated, ruthless, and protective of their positions. If you want to enter the war, follow me." So saying, he took the stairs into his vast training basement, waiting to hear if the stairs would creak behind him. Either way, he would be disappointed. The kids had left, and Urahara Kisuke sat in his shop, Yoruchi in cat form on his lap, with Kurosaki Isshin leaning across the table. "It's not up to you," Urahara said to Isshin. "She wants to learn. So as long as she asks, I won't refuse. But what I teach her is up to you. It can be a few tricks to defend herself, or I can genuinely try to awaken her Shinigami nature. Either way, I agree that I don't want her fighting anytime soon." This wasn't to say that he wouldn't send her to fight if it was necessary. Isshin considered, "She's only but I was younger than her when I began my training." He hesitated. "But for my type, it takes longer to learn to do anything. And Karen's been raised as a human." Yoruchi said, "True, but didn't Masaki want them to have the choice?" Isshin sighed. "What is our timeline like?" Urahara shrugged. "My gut says this long stalemate will break soon, but I can't know for sure. I know where I hid the Hogyoku, and I know it's still there." Yawning, Yoruchi said, "And we know Aizen's been nosing around the right place." Urahara replied, "Does he have no idea of its location? Does he suspect? Does he know for sure? Those are all open questions. He hasn't made a move for it, but its protections are no joke. Even if he knows, he'll take his time." "How much time? A week or 5 years?" "I don't know." "What's your best guess?" Isshin asked. Yoruchi said, "Within a year, the situation will change. He's degraded the Godei 13 as much as he can without wrecking the facade that everything is okay, and if Kisuke is right, your son is too interesting for him to ignore. And I think he's sniffed out where the Hogyoku is." "Then shouldn't you move it?" Isshin suggested. Urahara said, "It's not that simple. The moment Aizen goes for it is the moment we can expose him. If we don't believe we can stop him, we might as well give up now." Isshin sighed. "And Karakura town is becoming the spiritual center." Urahara blinked. "Don't look so surprised. I may not be able to feel it, but I've always known this might happen, and I've regained enough of my powers to see some signs and deduce others. Which means, whether Karen can defend herself or not, it's likely her life will be under threat. Teach her, Kisuke-san, Yoruchi-san. But Kisuke, none of your, the best way to improve is to bet your life on it, lessons. Teach her like a normal person." "I'll see to it," Yoruchi said, looking meaningfully at Urahara. When Rukia returned to Siriidii through the Senkamen, a Kuchiki retainer was there to meet her, which wasn't surprising. What was odd was that it was Kuchiki Harupen, Onie-sama's grandfather's cousin, a clan elder and steward. He had 2 lesser retainers at his side and was actually smiling at her. "Oju-sama," he greeted her. "Harupen Dano," she replied with a bow of her own. Harupen had never been rude to her. Rarer than that, he had never been cruel to her. But he hadn't spent any more time in her company than etiquette required. She'd always thought he regarded her as a burden, as a duty to be discharged. "Your feats do honor to the family," Harupen said. "You praise me too highly. Slaying the slippery Grand Fisher, and now a Minos Grande. And it has not failed to reach my attention that, not long ago, you defeated the vice-captain of the 6th Division in a spar. This one is honored by your praise, but if the honorable vice-captain had approached the spar with seriousness, it would not have gone as it did. That may or may not be, Oju-sama. I fancy you would have defeated him even if he had not been so foolish as to overlook you. But either way, it is a travesty that you are yet unseated. Perhaps you should be transferred to another division, one where your talents will receive the recognition they deserve. Rukia said, I am humbled by your confidence, but I do not believe the 13th division misvalues me. If there has been anyone opposed to my advancement, that person is not in the 13th division. Harapin looked mildly surprised, then contemplative. Thinking about it upset her. The occasional overprotectiveness was the surest proof she ever saw that Onie-sama cared, but that didn't mean it didn't grate. Harapin said, if I may be so forward, Oju-sama, with a rise in rank, so comes a rise in one's duties to the clan. Few know the weight of duty so intimately as Kachiki Byakuyadano. Rukia was so startled she nearly missed a step. Harapin was being remarkably frank, and the explanation cooled her ire. And also explained why Harapin was being so friendly. They chose to believe the charitable version. Now that Harapin knew she was useful and not just someone Onie-sama had picked up off the street, he was ready to regard her as part of the family. Rukia's visit to the estate was cut short when she sensed that Ichigo was fighting a hollow. She didn't know how she knew, she certainly didn't feel his ryatsu. She just had a strong intuition, and how that worked was a question for later. She tried to convince herself she was imagining it, but deep down, she couldn't believe that. The fight ended quickly, and Ichigo was fine, just frustrated. She excused herself and rushed to the Division 13 headquarters. Bypassing the yard, she slipped directly into Yukate's office and reported briefly to her captain. He informed her that Ichigo was being introduced as a member of the division, but he didn't know what Ichigo was up to for the day. Entering the yard, she was immediately surrounded by her fellow Shinigami, mostly the younger ones, along with the 2/3 seats, clamoring to know what it had been like to fight a Gillian. She heard more exclamations about her height from those who hadn't seen her last time. Hopping onto a railing to get above them, Rukia shouted, the Gillian was big, clumsy, and frightening, which made my Shikai a good match for it. I'm fortunate I got the drop on it. If you want to know more, ask after you've beaten me in a match. After hopping off the railing, she leaned close to Kion and asked in a low voice, how's Ichigo? You know Ichigo? He's doing well. Today he tagged along with a couple of his friends to do a standby shift in District 18. A shift? Friends? When Yukate had invited Ichigo to visit Siriidii, she hadn't imagined he would be thrown into division life like that. What if he were found out? He hardly knew any Kido and knew virtually nothing about Soul Society. If she hurried, she could reach District 18 in just over an hour. Kion added, they should be back soon. Or she could wait. How's the captain's health been? Still in a good patch. She went to her apartment to settle her things, contemplating what she might like to add. Even though she had a Kuchiki expense account, she hated using it for personal reasons, but the money from purifying the Gillian would go a long way. She decided to start with new speakers. Re-entering the yard, a hand tapped her shoulder. It was Ita Kenji, the middle-aged fourth seat, sporting a straight-edged field of dark stubble on his cheeks and chin. He said, Kuchiki-san, I'll take you up on that challenge. Smirking, she replied, Shurnai or Zanpakuto? Zanpakuto. No Shikai. No Kido either. You're stacking the deck in your favor, Ita-san. I want a spar, not another embarrassing experience with Bakuto. Smiling at the reminder of what was, for her, a good memory, Rukia drew her Zanpakuto. A circle cleared around them, everyone excited to see a spar between the fourth seat and the Kuchiki who, despite being unseated, had recently defeated a Gillian and was acknowledged as one of the strongest in the division. Rukia asked, Shunpa is allowed though, right? In response, Ita shunpoed behind her. But she had shunpoed too, right behind where she knew he would go. As he darted away, she grazed his cheek with her blade, letting him know she could have ended it there, a movement so fast that only a few of the top seats saw it. He took his guard position, noticeably more cautious, and Rukia attacked. Strike, lock, move, downswing, swing back up, riposte, move. Ida stepped back with every blow, needing all his strength to deflect as Rukia played around. He wasn't bad, but compared to Renji, he didn't measure up. Not much compared to Ichigo either. The lull in her concentration created by the thought that Ichigo had nearly as much raw power as Renji, who was a vice-captain, was not enough for Ito to take advantage. Stepping back, she reduced her spiritual energy until it was just above Ito's. Since when had she had to pull back that far to match him? She must have improved more than she'd realized. With the power gap closed, the fight intensified, becoming a test of skill. After several exchanges, she moved in close, withdrew, and when he slashed at her midsection, she caught his blade on hers, bent, passed his swing over her head, and move. He leaped back. In the moment where both his feet were off the ground, Rukia shunpoed behind him. He blocked her swing over his back. Rukia then kicked him hard, and he hit the ground, trying to roll to his feet, but it was tough when your opponent had stepped on your leg. He ended up sprawled out, face in the dirt, and Rukia touched the tip of her blade to his back. "Yield," she said. "I yield," Ito agreed. She backed away, taking in the few half-mocking cheers from the watchers with a grin as she sheathed her zanpakuto. "Why aren't you seated?" Kenji complained, rubbing his back. "It's embarrassing for a fourth seat to get kicked around by someone unseated." Rukia replied, "I'm not just anyone. I'm Kuchiki Rukia, slayer of Gillians." He groaned. Burying a smirk, Rukia heard another voice growing closer. The voice said, that I could see its weight was on its front legs. "I figure, if it can't dance, go right at it. You should still go over the back, Kurosaki-san. It had that crazy tail, spikes on the back of its neck, and its back legs were double-joined. I'm telling you, that thing was practically made for stopping over the back." Accompanied by Ayashima and Megumi, Ichigo came around the corner, effectively shirtless, stripped to his skirt like hakama, with the Ryatsu-suppressing necklace he'd gotten from Urahara hanging there for all to see. A long, shallow cut ran most of the way along his right pectoral muscle, already scabbed over. Rukia should have pretended to only vaguely remember him. That had been the idea. But seeing him bare-chested, she couldn't help yelling, "Idiot! Cover yourself. Where's your kosode? Hello to you too, Beach. You point me at where I can get a new kosode, and I'll go right over there. But it's not like there's anything wrong with this." Nothing wrong with it. This was Soul Society, not the human world. It was far more formal. And did he not see the way Kion was looking at him? Kion might be old enough to be his grandmother, but she was at about the same stage in physical maturation as Ichigo, which was all she would care about. He was practically advertising himself. Ichigo said, "It's not like I wanted the hollow to spit all over me as it passed." Megumi added, "He smelled terrible. For the sake of everyone, he used a public shower, but it was too late for the kosode." Megumi looked at him with admiration, clearly impressed by Ichigo's boldness in confronting the hollow. "I'd say it was a level where fortunate Ichigo was with us," Megumi remarked. "Bullshit," Ichigo replied. "You and Ayashima could have handled it without me." "A level 5? Rukia thought. That seemed like a tall order for those two. She spoke up, "And you got injured, Ichigo. Sit down and let me see to that." "It's fine." She pressed him down onto the porch, her right hand glowing with aquamarine healing Kido as she focused on his cut. Kenji asked, "Kuchiki-san, you know him?" It was too late to deny it. "Of course. I took this idiot under my wing when he became a Shinigami." Ichigo quipped, "And what tiny wings they were to fit under. I spent all my time crouched." She playfully cuffed him on the head with one hand while continuing to heal him with the other. Observers noted how relaxed Ichigo was with her close proximity, as if she had healed him many times before. "I'd better report to the captain," Ayashima said. "Let's go," Kion replied. "A level 5 in District 18 isn't something you hear every day." Rukia stood in the garden with Kachiki Byakuya, gazing over the koi ponds. You dispatched a Gillian, Byakuya stated. Yes, Rukia confirmed. A dangerous assignment. There is a high density of hollows there, Rukia agreed. But an incursion like that is hardly typical. Captain Yukitake is sending me help. Kurosaki-san is young, but he's talented and battle-tested. He has Shikai. I can trust him to watch my back. Rukia swallowed nervously. Onie-sama, I beg leave to continue the assignment. I believe I have earned that right. Byakuya remained silent. After 8 days, Ichigo sat in Yukitake's back room with Yukitake and Rukia, keeping their voices low even though the captain had used Kido to ensure their privacy. It was a lot of fun, Ichigo assured them. And I learned a lot. He had mostly learned how a division functioned. While he had practiced some Kido, he had avoided attempting anything too advanced. At the academy, everyone at least attempted the first 40 and wrote essays on the rest. It would look strange if others saw him trying Heido 7 for the first time. Yukitake asked, when could you return? I only have 2 more weeks of school before summer vacation starts. Then I'll be free for about 5 weeks, Ichigo replied. He wished he were American, he had heard their summer breaks were much longer. Yukitake continued, and after your school ends? Rukia suggested, Ichigo, could I bring you here every other Sunday? That would be a good schedule for regular check-ins. That's fine, Ichigo agreed. Yukitake asked, and you're sure you have everything, Kurosaki-kun? Seems to, Ichigo said. He had a full set of Shinigami supplies, books, and equipment, all fitting in a small inner pocket of his kosode. Here he was in Siriidii, in Soul Society, being a Shinigami. He had an apartment in the barracks, an ID badge, a paycheck, and of course, a Zanpakuto. His new friend said he had a bright future in the Godai. It was easy to imagine himself as a Shinigami for real, easy to forget he was human. He reminded himself that he could visit his sisters and father once a month, just like anyone else who moved away for a good job, except he'd visit them in a jigai and would never age. He had noticed that Division 13 had no vice-captain, and he was already one of the stronger members of the division. The title of Vice-Captain Kurosaki had a nice ring to it. It was hard not to think about that when several people had mentioned how much he resembled the old vice-captain, Shiba Kyan. Kyan had been killed in battle against a hollow, even though he had been stronger than Ichigo. It was difficult to believe he would die too. After all, he hadn't died yet, so why would he die later? Not long ago, he had been terrified at the thought of fighting hollows regularly, but now he knew he would miss it if he stopped. It wasn't just the feeling of making a difference, it was the thrill of the fight, the adrenaline rush. To Rukia, he said, I'm ready to go. They walked into the yard together, and Kyon or Sentaro must have spread the word that they were leaving because people were calling goodbye. Mostly to Rukia, but to him too. Ayashima said, see you around, Kurosaki-san. See ya, Ichigo replied. Don't forget Rukongai needs guarding too, Megumi called after him. Ichigo waved in acknowledgement. He had heard that the outlying districts of Rukongai were challenging, but the farthest he had been was District 27, which he found quite pleasant. The number of street musicians had been astonishing, even more than the crowds playing in parks. The sheer number of people was hard to comprehend. Heavily populated districts stretched endlessly in all directions, a level of urbanization that even Japan couldn't match. With most of the populace having little need for food, life had evolved that way. Siriidii itself was a small stone at the center of a vast expanse. They shunpoed to the official, regulated Godai 13 Senkaman, a large empty gate manned by the Kido Corporation. Ichigo signed in, handed his badge to the Kido Corp member for scanning, and acted as if he hadn't been tense at all when she returned it without a second glance. It was a real badge, after all. The gate activated, Japanese screens appearing and then separating to reveal bright white light. Telling himself not to be nervous and to act as if this was normal for him, Ichigo stepped back through the door between dimensions. Kuchiki Byakuya entered the 13th Division's headquarters, his red-haired vice-captain dutifully stepping back. Whispers followed the vice-captain. The story of Kuchiki Rukia defeating him had spread far and wide. Byakuya could tell from his heavy scowl that he was aware of it. It was not a good day for Captain Yukitake. His run of good health had ended, and he had spent the morning in bed, feeling unwell. He had dragged himself out of bed for a recuperative lunch and then sat at his desk. Even if he wasn't up to inspections or running drills, he could still read reports and decide on assignments. That was hardly rigorous. When Sentaro informed Yukitake of Captain Kuchiki's approach, he quickly tidied up, hoping to avoid a coughing fit in front of his young colleague. Kion entered with a fresh pot of tea just as Sentaro brought in Byakuya and Abarai. Yukitake smiled warmly and asked, "What can I do for you gentlemen today?" Kuchiki greeted him with a polite yet cold bow, skipping the small talk and diving straight into business. They discussed division matters, particularly who should have jurisdiction over South Rukongai 38 through 43 issues typically resolved through written correspondence. As the conversation began to wind down, Yukitake suppressed an itch in his throat with sips of honeyed tea. Byakuya then revealed the true purpose of his visit. "I understand my younger sister continues on her previous assignment. Given the dangers of the area, I trust you've provided Shinigami Kuchiki Rukia with a suitable partner." "Yes, Ichigo-kun. He's young, but I have high hopes for him. He possesses the raw ability of a seated officer, though I've held him back due to his lack of experience. He has the potential to excel if he has the right mindset," Yukitake replied with a shrug. "If not, he may remain stagnant in lower ranks. But since I wasn't allowed my first choice for vice-captain, I hope that won't be the case." Byakuya's expression hardened. Considering Division 13's history with vice-captains, perhaps that choice should be reconsidered. Yukitake stood, feeling a sting from the comment. "I'm not sure what you mean by that." "I mean nothing," Byakuya said. "Please excuse me if I've offended your pride. Pride can recover, fatal mistakes cannot." "Byakuya, you have said enough." Though he didn't reach for his zanpakuto, the urge was there. "My deepest apologies," Byakuya continued. "I only wonder which subordinate will bear the consequences if your next vice-captain is left to face danger alone." Kion gasped, and Yukitake felt his ryatsu rise, but he couldn't deny the truth in the accusation. He had allowed Kion to confront a hollow alone for the sake of pride, resulting in tragedy. If he had intervened, or even allowed Rukia to help, things might have turned out differently. Kion was strong enough to have survived with support, and Division 13 would have been better for it. Did Byakuya blame him for Rukia's lingering sadness and misplaced guilt? If so, beneath his composed exterior, Byakuya still carried the same intensity he had as a boy. Yukitake's anger faded. "Why have you really come, Byakuya? Besides pushing me to treat your sister as if she is fragile. I have no desire for her to be seen as weak. She has proven herself recently, defeating formidable foes. House Kuchiki would not object if she were offered a seated position, though it would be wise to avoid a single-digit rank due to her relative youth and inexperience." Yukitake felt tempted to promote Rukia to the 9th seat just to challenge Byakuya. However, as Rukia's head of house, Byakuya could easily withdraw her from the division if he chose. The excuse about her relative youth is wearing thin. She's been in the Godai 13 longer than several current vice-captains, including your own, Yukitake pointed out. Byakuya left without acknowledging that point, and Yukitake finally allowed himself to succumb to a long coughing fit. Rukia was not sad to be back in Karakura town. While she would miss her rooms at the division and the Kuchiki estate, she looked forward to returning home. They could read manga together, and at night, Ichigo would sleep on his bed while she could cozy up in his closet, far more comfortable than their separate apartments at Division 13 headquarters. She considered asking Kion to arrange their apartments next to each other but quickly dismissed the thought. She had more pressing matters to focus on, like the headache she intended to spare Ichigo until they returned to Karakura town. A bit hesitant about introducing Ichigo to Afro-san, she messaged him to let him know they had arrived. Looking at her phone, she said, "Ichigo, Karen can see Shinigami and hollows. When you were gone, she asked me why. I explained a bit. You should talk to her." Ichigo, startled, exclaimed, "What the hell," as he caught himself from falling. "It's hardly a surprise. She's your sister. You should have seen this coming. She was pretending not to notice me for weeks. And you didn't tell me? I didn't want to intrude into your family business. Next time tell me." He shunpoed toward his home, and she shunpoed ahead, teasing him, still too slow. They slipped through the window to find Kon at Ichigo's desk, doing homework. It tugged at her heart to think that Kon might enjoy pretending to be Ichigo, living a life with friends and family. Then Kon spoiled the moment by saying, "Nei-san, you're back," and tried to hug her. She put him in an arm lock, and Ichigo asked, "Anything special to report?" "Nah. Your dad's an idiot, Yuzu's sweet, and Karen's surly. And school? The Quincy is quiet, Chad is cool, Kigo's an idiot, Mizuiro is suave, Orihime is strange, and Tatsuki thinks you should join the karate team. I aced your math test and kicked the bully in the face when he wouldn't leave me alone about my hair color. Sounds good. Let's switch," Ichigo said, easily transitioning into his own body while Kon took over the lion plushie. Rukia followed Ichigo downstairs, where Karen was in the kitchen, reading a book in the light from the window. Rukia lingered at the end of the hall as Ichigo called out, "Karen." She looked up, greeted him with a casual, "Hey," and returned to her reading. After a moment, she looked up again. "Is that you, Ichi-nii?" "To the soul," Ichigo replied. Karen closed her book. "Welcome home." "It's good to be back," Ichigo said. "Your trip went well?" she asked. "Yeah. I learned a lot, and I got an ID badge and everything. The captain's cool, and I made a couple of new friends." "Shinigami, huh?" Karen inquired. "Yep. Purifying hollows and guiding ghosts to the next plane of existence." Why?" Karen pressed. Ichigo answered, "Because it needs doing and I can do it." Karen pondered for a moment. "You think I'll do it too someday?" "Maybe. After you grow up, get married, have kids, go gray, and die in your sleep surrounded by grandkids. Living people don't normally do it." "But you do," she pointed out. Ichigo shrugged. His situation was unique. "Tell you what. If you get Shinigami powers too, you can do it." "Pinky swear?" Karen asked. Rolling his eyes, Ichigo replied, "Pinky swear." As they hooked pinky fingers, Yuzu entered, midway through eating a purple popsicle. Swallowing, Yuzu asked, "What's going on?" Before Ichigo could respond, Karen casually said, "Ichi-nii is doing ghost stuff with a samurai ghost lady. If you learn to see them, they'll tell you more, but just a warning, the samurai ghost lady is harder to see than normal ghosts, and you can't even see those." "Yes, I can," Yuzu insisted. "They're blurry, but I'm getting better. They're getting clearer all the time." Rukia felt a twinge of concern. The combined Ryatsu from her and Ichigo was affecting Yuzu. Time for another trip to Urahara's. As they entered the shop, the bell rang, but no one looked up. Urahara was at the front, refereeing a game between Yururu and Jinta. "It's Snake," Jinta declared. Yururu countered, "Double crunch is half helix." "It's Snake," Jinta insisted, "look at it." "Double crunch is half helix," Yururu repeated. Urahara intervened, rapping Jinta's knuckles with his fan. "It is double crunch, Jinta-kun. See." He touched two tiles. "For half helix, you get a point, but you called it wrong, so Yururu steals. 1 point to Yururu, and it's Yururu's turn." Moving a tile, Yururu said, "Half helix is Snake," Yururu wins 3 points, goes again. She set 4 tiles on the board. Yururu spends 4 points. Yururu claims the trick, full helix. Arg! Jinta exclaimed. Rukia interjected, excuse me. Urahara replied, patience, honored customer. This is an important moment for Jinta-kun. If he doesn't turn it around here, he'll have to clean the shop for a week. But. Patience, honored customer. Jinta declared. Jinta spends 1 point, and removed 2 tiles from the board. Jinta completes 2 tricks, the circle. Yururu pointed out, those are ovals. Urahara clarified, ovals aren't tricks and aren't worth any points, Jinta-kun. Arg! Urahara raised Yururu's right arm. Yururu wins again. Yay, Yururu said flatly. Urahara handed Jinta a broom. Rukia and Ichigo stepped further into the shop as Jinta glumly marched out onto the stoop with the broom. Rukia said, I'm interested in that Ryatsu suppression bracelet and necklace said Ichigo got. I might want my own set. Urahara animatedly responded, excellent choice, honored customer. They suppress Ryatsu by 60% while only decreasing power by 10%. And you can turn it off with a single twist. Far better than the Godii 13's limiters, right? He opened a cabinet to reveal white cloth. And look at this line of undershirts and long johns. The fabric catches Ryatsu and breaks it into fundamental spirit particles, reducing apparent Ryatsu by nearly 25% with no loss to power whatsoever. Rukia asked, why aren't they standard issue? If they worked as Urahara claimed, they wouldn't just help keep high seats from influencing humans, they'd help everyone sneak up on hollows more easily and keep Shinigami alive. Urahara shrugged. You know how government contracts are. If you don't have a history of producing at scale, they're not interested. But when you return to Siriidii, spread the word. Urahara Kisuke still has the best gear, and buying from him is not illegal, only suspicious. I'll be sure to tell them, Rukia replied. Urahara added, the head of the Onmitsukido may hate my guts, but she doesn't actually have an arrest order for me. Buying from me is totally safe. I'll pass that on, Rukia said. Before I was exiled, the captain commander described me as, not really that annoying when out of earshot. Quite the endorsement, Rukia remarked. She purchased the necklace and bracelet set for herself, along with her Ryatsu suppressing undershirt and long johns, leaving Ichigo to make his own purchases. He had a paycheck and commissions for a couple of hollows. It was time for him to buy what he needed. After they paid, Rukia said, and we'd like to use your basement again. The basement is currently unavailable. Why? She asked. Tessai-san's hot tub parties. Don't judge, it's his passion. Come back tomorrow, and it will all be cleaned up. And from now on, I expect you to pay rent for the room. 40 kan per hour. 40 kan. You're joking. 8 at most. With all the damage you and Kurosaki will do, 8 kan would have me working an hour for a grain of rice. I'll need 35 at least just to look myself in the mirror and not call myself a bum. Fine. 30. Is there somewhere else around here you plan to train? 32. 32. She agreed. So this was where a lot of the money from purifying that Gillian would go. And you have to reserve at least a day ahead. If we have to reserve ahead, 25. 30. 28. Deal. After the 2 Shinigami left, Urahara stepped down into his training basement, leaving the store to Jinta. Tessai stood with Sato, Orihime, and Tatsuki kneeling in a semicircle around him, the 3 humans straining against the low-level Bakudo Tessai had cast weakly on them. Well? Urahara asked. Tessai reported, Manager Dano, Sato Dano has broken it 4 times. Orihime Dano has broken it twice. Tatsuki Dano is on her first. Urahara walked forward. Orihime's hairclip sparkled interestingly. Chad's right arm bulged with gathered spiritual energy. As Urahara watched, Chad broke the bakudo again, prompting Tetsai to recast it at a slightly higher level. Tatsuki had her eyes shut, trying so hard that tears leaked from beneath her lids. Tetsai said, "They can all surely see Shinigami and hollows now." Urahara nodded. "Good. Tatsuki-chan, that's enough for today." "I can do it," she protested. Urahara motioned, and Tetsai released the bakudo. "Cast it on me again," she insisted. "Tatsuki-chan, you're an athlete. You know it's important to pace yourself." "You can always try again tomorrow," Urahara advised gently. "But I can do more today." Tatsuki insisted. With a slight smile, Urahara nudged her spirit form away from her body with the end of his cane, the soul chain still connecting her to her physical self. What? Tatsuki looked at her body in confusion, then slapped her chest. "Am I a ghost? As long as the chain is intact, we can return you to your body without any trouble. Just lift your body," Urahara instructed. Tatsuki approached her body, slipped her arm under its shoulders, and struggled to lift it as if it were a heavy weight. "Just the arm," Urahara reminded her. With a determined effort, Tatsuki lifted her body's arm, her muscles straining. "Good. Now do some push-ups, sit-ups, and stretches while in your spirit form. Make sure to eat well tonight and get plenty of rest," Urahara advised. After the kids left, Urahara sighed. He recognized the potential in Sato and Orihime, but progress was slow. He didn't want to create a life-threatening situation to spur their growth, especially since Kachiki-san had effectively handled the challenges that arose. Tatsuki, while seemingly less talented, understood the value of hard work and dedication to mastering martial arts. Unlike Sato and Orihime, she didn't need a reason to push herself, she would tackle any challenge simply because it existed. He pondered this as he and Tetsai worked on building the hot tubs. Returning to school felt refreshing for Ichigo. He was happy to see Sato, Tatsuki, and even Orihime, though he wished he could be studying Kido or reviewing the books Captain Yukitake had given him instead. His entrance to the classroom went unnoticed, and Kigo greeted him as usual, indicating that Kon had managed things well. However, he could feel Ishida's gaze on him, filled with a mix of resentment and shame. Ichigo chose to ignore it for now and opened his notebook, noting that Kon had taken decent notes in a good imitation of his handwriting. Tatsuki asked, "Do anything this weekend?" "Not really." "You?" Ichigo replied. "Nah. Haven't seen you much lately," she shrugged. Ichigo realized he had been neglecting his friends, too caught up in his Shinigami duties. He decided he should make an effort to reconnect. "I've got some things to do this afternoon and evening, but how about hitting the arcade tomorrow after your karate class?" "I have an appointment." "What about the day after tomorrow?" Tatsuki suggested. "That should work," Ichigo agreed, not bothering to invite the others. Chad was low on funds, Mizuiro and Kigo would invite themselves, and Orihime was closer to Tatsuki than to him. Tatsuki then asked, "Do you keep in contact with Kachiki-san?" Ichigo hesitated, considering a lie, but decided against it. "A bit. Mostly calls. She doesn't live too far away." "You should invite her if it's not too much trouble," Tatsuki encouraged. "Will do," Ichigo replied. Karen, dressed in her soccer attire, approached Ichigo. "Hat and clogs. What are the hot tubs for?" "Relaxation and back pain," he answered. "No, really," she pressed. "An alibi," he replied with a smirk. "Something to do with Ichii and Ghost Lady?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Possibly," Ichigo admitted. "What are we doing today?" "More bakudo breaking." "The control exercise with that orb?" Karen inquired. "Later. For starters, I thought we'd try something different." Ichigo had a specific reason for separating her training from the others. Karen was unique. He considered pushing her limits, but Isshin had asked him to teach her as a normal person would. From behind his back, he revealed a small katana, slightly long for her but the best he had. It was an asachi, a blank zanpakuto that Shinigami used to discover their true weapon. "Today, we're doing kendo practice," he announced. When Rukia arrived and saw the hot tubs, she couldn't help but facepalm. She had thought Urahara was joking about the Tessai-san's nudist hot tub party's excuse for limited access to the training basement. But there they were, 10 large hot tubs near the entrance. She didn't want to think about what might happen in them. She shunpoed past them, Ichigo following closely behind. Turning back, she called to Urahara, "Privacy, please. We'll settle up when we're done." Urahara shouted back, "I installed an antenna so your phone will still get alerts. Don't destroy it, it's right here." He pointed to a silvery antenna near the stairs. Rukia gulped, realizing the barriers would block signals from Soul Society. Thankfully, Urahara had thought ahead. Okay. They spent the first 30 minutes on Kido practice, with Ichigo making only slight progress. There was much more to it than memorizing incantations, it required manipulating spiritual energy in complex ways. Ichigo stretched out his hand and attempted Heido number 4, Byakurai, with the full incantation. Bluish-white Kido energy erupted from his fingertips. He cursed, but Rukia was pleased, it was definitely Kido energy rather than just a burst of Ryatsu. "We'll do more theory work at home. Let's see that Shikai," Rukia suggested. In their previous practice sessions, they had focused on Zanjutsu basics, so this was only the second time they would face each other with their Shikai. Ichigo summoned his dual-wield form, which he preferred. "Do you know how to use 2 blades at once?" Rukia asked. "Captain Yukitake gave me a few pointers, but I'll need to learn the rest through experience," Ichigo replied. "Then I'll make sure you learn," Rukia declared, dashing forward. This time would be different, he was now part of the Godiai 13, and it was time to challenge him. She shunpoed behind him and aimed a strike at his back. Ichigo's eyes widened, and he reacted just in time to deflect her blade, though not completely. She managed to draw a line along his arm before backstepping, and he countered with a swift lunge. His movements were swift as he engaged in combat with Shiro-chan, who skillfully evaded his strikes. Ichigo struggled to manage his long blades, finding it difficult to maneuver effectively. Normally, she would want to close the distance to gain an advantage, but facing 2 blades made that risky. Despite Ichigo's inexperience, having only trained for a couple of months, Rukia had been a Shinigami for 40 years. With determination, she advanced, deflecting his swings and forcing his blades to clash against each other. She marked his chest, arms, and cheeks with the tip of her zanpakuto, while Ichigo tried to regain his footing. "You're fighting like you're afraid of cutting me," Rukia observed. "I don't want to cut you," Ichigo replied. "Why not? I'm enjoying this. Take off those suppressors and fight me like I'm your enemy. That's how I'm thinking of you right now." Ichigo complied, releasing his Ryatsu, which surged powerfully. Rukia charged in, and as she attacked, Ichigo raised Shiro-chan to block her strike. However, Rukia pushed through his guard, leaving a mark on his chest. Ichigo winced, and she danced away as Kuroasan approached. "You understand, Ichigo. A blade swung with one hand is half as strong. You cannot block my 2-handed strike with a single hand. You must parry, deflect, evade, and strike with your other blade while I'm extended." "You sliced me open," he exclaimed. "Don't be such a baby. Now fight me seriously, or I won't take responsibility for what happens." As Rukia attacked again, Ichigo dodged, his expression revealing his fear and uncertainty. "Ichigo, your blades speak only of fear. When you counter, it's because you fear being cut. When you protect someone, you fear you could let them die. When you attack, you fear killing. Pathetic, Ichigo. Fear is not what you need. When you counter, you don't let them cut you. When you protect someone, you don't let them die. And when you attack, you kill. Ichigo paused, adjusting his stance and feeling a surge of energy. For the first time, he faced her with genuine aggression. Rukia responded, surprised by the intensity of his ryatsu. She charged, and Kurowasen made a powerful downward strike, releasing a wave of energy that carved a deep gash in the ground. Rukia took the hit on her Zanpakuto, laughing as it propelled her through the air. Good. Whatever that was, do it again, she encouraged. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. As ice raced toward him, Ichigo roared, unleashing a torrent of energy to meet it. The two attacks clashed, and while the ice won, Ichigo emerged from the snow, ready to defend himself. He crossed his blades just in time to block Rukia's next attack, feeling the impact as she landed on him, pushing down with her Zanpakuto. Stop stepping on me, he gasped. Make me, she teased, ice crystals forming on his blades. Ichigo grinned, his energy rising as he pushed back against her. Suddenly, his phone rang, breaking the tension. What the hell's that ringtone? He asked as Rukia silenced her own phone, mentioning a hollow she needed to deal with before shunpoing away. Upon returning to the training basement, Rukia was taken aback by the massive gashes in the landscape, evidence of Ichigo's power. Rukia, watch this, he called out, raising Kurowasen and shouting, Getsuga Tensho. A powerful wave of energy surged forth, creating another canyon in the ground. Do it again, she urged, impressed by his progress. Ichigo unleashed another attack that reminded her of the Quincy's arrows, but it was distinctly Shinigami energy. Getsuga Tensho? Rukia inquired. That's its name, he replied. You remember what the second attack I used against the Gillian was called? No. Cool attack though. It's called Teshuga Tensho. And it looks a little similar. Watch, Rukia said, steadying herself as she focused on the essence of the biting winter wind. Teshugo Tensho. The cold energy radiated from her blade, striking the ground and creating a 10-foot-wide circle of ice as the water vapor above froze instantly. Ichigo glanced from her frozen circle to the canyons he had created in the landscape. Step on it, she urged. Humoring her, he stepped forward, placing one foot on the icy ground. For a brief moment, he remained casual, but then his eyes widened, and he leaped back, exclaiming, Holy ow! He touched his sandal, quickly retracting his hand and shaking his fingertips. The sandal had broken, and Ichigo rubbed his foot. Not so flashy, Rukia remarked. But would you like to be hit with it? Hell no. I'd die. That's the idea. But Ichigo, this attack doesn't just share a name with yours, it resembles it too. I could even say it's an ice version of it. Ichigo shrugged. That's not surprising. Purple eyes, always knowing where the other person is, mysteriously aware during fights. It fits. It's clear we got tangled up. Rukia sighed. I've been trying not to think about this. Right now, it's manageable, even helpful. But it's getting stronger. Before, I only felt you when you fought. Now, I have a sense of what you're doing all the time. If it keeps intensifying, there could be serious side effects. We could both lose our minds, or worse. Even as it is now, there could be issues. For instance, if you get married, I don't want to experience what intimacy with her is like from your perspective, and I assume you feel the same. Ichigo grimaced. That's just wrong. That's a plausible reality. Ichigo asked, are you into guys or girls? Guys, she replied. Definitely wrong then. Fool. She kicked him playfully. That line was worthy of Kigo. He wanted to argue back, but she was right. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Don't. That's not like you. Just scowl. He nodded, trying to comply. Scowl, I said. I'm scowling. No, you're not. Be more upset. Ichigo retorted, don't tell me what facial expressions to have. See, that's better. You're scowling. Does me being angry make you happy? Duh. I thought that was obvious. Why do you think I annoy you all the time? He tugged on his hair, and they fell into silence. Stress may have been relieved, but they still faced a problem. Jinzen? Ichigo asked. I've performed Jinzen many times. Sodi no Shirayuki has been evasive on the subject. What if we Jinzen together? Fool, Jinzen is a noun, not a verb. You don't Jinzen together, you perform Jinzen together. I'll verb any noun I like, thanks very much. Rukia flicked his forehead. You're a menace to the language. Turning serious, Ichigo said, are you done playing? We should do this and not procrastinate any longer. Rukia sat cross-legged on the ground, placing her zanpakuto across her thighs as Ichigo did the same. Knees touching, Rukia took his hands, and together, they entered their respective inner worlds. Rukia's inner world resembled a winter festival. Pure white snow blanketed the ground and the surrounding fir trees. The starlight and moon illuminated the scene, enhancing the vibrant atmosphere of the stalls filled with mouth-watering scents: pork buns, hot soup, okonomiyaki, and takoyaki. She had often enjoyed these festival foods and found them delightful. There were games like goldfish scooping and ring toss, along with shops selling masks and plushies. All the stalls were empty except for one, which seemed to appear in different locations each time. Rukia took 2 cups of hot tea from a tea stall and searched for ice sculptures. It didn't take long for her to find Shirayuki's stall, drawn by the chill and the desire to dance. There, she discovered an array of ice sculptures, a dragon, a tiger shaking itself dry, and an abstract series of curves and spikes. Behind them stood Sodi no Shirayuki herself. Sodi no Shirayuki was stunning, but if she materialized in Soul Society, no one would mistake her for anything but a zanpakuto. She was a glimmering white, resembling packed snow, with dark eyes like the space between stars. Her form shifted with every movement, a woman of 1,000 faces, and she had developed antler-like features. Outlined in wings resembling a halo, they were not the wings of a bird but more like those of an aquatic creature, soft and ethereal. Rukia sat before the stall, placing 1 cup of hot tea before Shirayuki. We need to talk. Rukia-sama, Shirayuki replied. I need to know what happened with you, me, Ichigo, and Zangetsu. I am your zanpakuto, not an omniscient being. I don't expect you to know everything. Just tell me what you think. I don't know how it was just because I was there. You were too. But I will share my thoughts. Shirayuki raised the tea cup and drank, the tea freezing as it flowed through her. Placing the empty cup between 2 sculptures, Shirayuki said, to coldness, heat is not the enemy but the object of its affections. It desires it. When it finds it, it takes it for itself. Rukia remained silent, already aware of this lesson from years past. You are my source of heat, as I am yours of cold. But not long ago, you placed me in a strange blue place. It did not fit me. But there was heat. As ever, I took, and I gave. I was not happy, but I could be content, knowing part of me was still with you, and I would return home after a time. It would only have been an interesting holiday. Slowly, I became aware of another watching me from a distance with suspicion. His name was Zangetsu. He called out to Ichigo repeatedly, trying to reach him from the depths of the world. In the depths of Ichigo's soul, I found one in the process of becoming. The one you call Shiro-chan. Vicious, enthusiastic, and loving, like a wolf puppy, and he was Zangetsu too. The more I spoke with him, the more real he became, while the black one could only watch and worry. Then came the day when the blue world trembled. The black one was absorbed into the white one, and together we rose high. What you and Ichigo were doing felt natural for us too. Rukia sighed, trying not to picture the implications of Shirayuki's relationship with Shiro-chan Zangetsu. The 4 of us moved into alignment, and I could feel you calling me home. Shiro-chan and I rose higher into the sky. Even as we embraced, I felt myself becoming more connected to you. At the peak of our connection, there was perfect harmony between Ichigo and the White One, and the White One called out his own name. Finally, Ichigo acknowledged him, saying the name himself. As Ichigo embraced his powers, I felt myself being pushed away. I knew I would return to you, and while I was happy, I was also filled with sorrow. Shiro-chan tried to hold on, and though I felt his pain, I knew I had to let go, so I pushed him away. Slowly, we separated, never to meet again. As our fingertips brushed for the final time, something unseen observed us. I couldn't identify it, but it smiled and assured us we didn't have to part completely. When I first returned home, I felt a mix of sadness and joy. Yet slowly, I realized I was different, subtly changed. I could still feel the blue world beneath me, and I sensed the Zangetsus, both black and white. Gradually, I am becoming more aware of them and how I have transformed. Rukia asked, "What about the thing you mentioned, black as the rainbow's end? What was that?" "I don't know. I only sensed its presence and intent." "And its intent was?" "To ensure that Shiro-chan and I wouldn't be cruelly separated." Rukia pressed further, "Where did it come from?" "I have no idea." After several more questions yielded no answers about the mysterious presence, Rukia shifted the topic. "Has your inner world changed at all?" Shirayuki responded, "Come," and stepped out of her stall. Rukia followed her into the snowy forest surrounding the vast festival, a journey made shorter by Shunpa. Most of her inner world was the festival, with the forest acting as a border. They slid down a snowy hill near the edge of her inner world, and the landscape transformed. Snow piled in square drifts like three-story buildings, and the night sky turned a deep blue, with stars and the moon shining brightly. The edge of the path had a sheer curb of ice, revealing strange sights Rukia had never encountered before. At the very edge of her inner world was a refraction. Beyond it lay a landscape similar to her own, but without the building-like snow drifts or the profound dark blue sky. Rukia knew that stepping into the refraction would lead her to the opposite side of her inner world. From the refraction emerged an absolute void, a tunnel of darkness that radiated neither heat nor sound. The only thing that came from it was Ichigo's Ryatsu. "I have found this," Shirayuki said. "I cannot yet cross it, but perhaps together we can." "Are you joking?" "Only a fool would willingly walk into the void of her own inner being." Just then, Kurosaki Ichigo stepped out of the void into Rukia's inner world. "You idiot!" Rukia exclaimed. "Idiot, idiot, idiot," she continued as she playfully hit him. "Stop hitting me," Ichigo said, covering his head. "You found a hole in your own inner world and thought it was a good idea to just walk through. You're lucky you're not in danger." "I'm fine," he replied. Walking carelessly into darkness. It wasn't complete darkness. "Kuroasan, show her." Wordlessly, Kuroasan raised his black blade, and bright blue Ryatsu spread along it, illuminating the snow. Rukia asked, "So what did you see?" "Nothing, actually. Just more darkness. But if there had been something, we would have seen it." She playfully slapped his head again. Stepping forward, Sodi no Shirayuki said, "Shiro-chan. I thought I'd never see you again." Shiro-chan shrugged. "Just came right through the void, and here we are. Let's find a private place to talk." Pulling him close, snowflake wings fluttering around him, Sodi no Shirayuki said, "You're so romantic." "That is not romantic," Rukia interjected. Ichigo pointed to the ground beside him. "Shiro-chan, here, now." "But. Now. That's not fair." Ichigo turned to Kuroasan, who pointed to the same spot Ichigo indicated. "Fine," Shiro-chan grumbled, stomping over and standing there, alternating between glaring at Ichigo and making faces at Shirayuki. Rukia decided to focus on more pressing matters than her Zanpakuto's questionable taste in companions. "What do your Zanpakutos know about us getting mixed up with each other?" Kuroasan replied, "I do not understand it, but we all gained more than we gave. Rukia added, Shiroyuki mentioned something black as the rainbow's end that partially caused it. Shiro-chan said, I didn't see anything. I was focused on Yuki-chan at the time. Kuroasan explained, at that moment, I was absorbed. However, I did sense a presence brush against us and open what was closed. Rukia pointed to the void. And this connection? Kuroasan stated, I believe it has grown. It has, Shiroyuki confirmed. At first, it was only large enough to obscure the moon. But over the last week, it hasn't grown more. I believe it has reached maturity. Ichigo asked, so, no one's in my inner world right now? Is that safe for my Shinigami form? Rukia's eyes widened. Ichigo, go back to it right now. Ichigo took a shortcut, exiting Jinzen instead of returning through the tunnel. When Ichigo opened his eyes, he could see himself, which wasn't unusual. He was accustomed to that. Only always before, it was his human body he was looking at, not his spiritual form. He looked down. No mistaking it. Rukia was pretty flat-chested, but she did have some curves. And at present, so did he. Rukia opened her eyes and stared at Ichigo, then at her large hands. She plucked an orange hair off her head and glared at him. You idiot. It's not my fault. Ichigo protested. Rukia replied, enter Jinzen again, and this time you don't exit Jinzen until you're back in your own inner world. Entering Jinzen, Rukia emerged into a bare cityscape of blue skyscrapers. It was a little boring, but unremarkable, except for one aspect. It's sideways, she noted, standing on a wall with the ground behind her and the sky ahead. As I said, Shiroyuki chimed in. Why is it sideways? What's wrong with him? What happens if I step off the wall of the building and don't catch myself on another? Do I just keep falling? I always caught myself on a building, Shiroyuki said. But it is pleasant to fall. Whatever. We just need to find the connection between Ichigo's soul need to find the soul tunnel. She needed a term that could not be suggestive. The soul tunnel. Shiroyuki remarked, Shiro-chan called it, the metaphor. It's a soul tunnel. Ichigo knew he should be looking for the soul tunnel, but Rukia's inner world resembled a festival. A very large and very empty festival with actual food. Why is our inner world so lame? Ichigo asked, but no one answered. Shiro-chan and Kuroasan had been next to him a moment ago, but they disappeared while he searched for names that were neither romantically nor suggestively inclined. Splashing caught his ear, and he ran to the sound. He found Shiro-chan on his knees at the goldfish scoop, but instead of using the scooper, he was using his hands, splashing water everywhere. Shiro-chan caught the goldfish and put it in his mouth. Ichigo tackled him, yelling, Shiro-chan. You're eating part of Rukia's inner world. Do you know what that could do to you? Or what it could do to her? What if you eat something important? Frightened, Shiro-chan pushed himself up, leaned over the goldfish pool, and coughed. Nothing came out. He coughed again, and again, a great hacking sound as Ichigo slapped him on the back. The goldfish popped out of his mouth and landed in the pool, belly up, unmoving. Ichigo and Shiro-chan waited, breath held. A fin moved. Another. The goldfish righted itself and swam off, and both Ichigo and Shiro-chan breathed out simultaneous sighs of relief. A deep voice said, Ichigo, you should try the takoyaki. Ichigo turned to see Kuroasan, a mask stuck to the side of his head, a stick of dango poking out of his mouth, and holding a half-eaten pork bun and a mug of steaming tea. He took another bite of the pork bun, and Ichigo couldn't help but feel it was worse than when Yuzu and Karen had been 3. Ichigo was looking at a booth of intricate ice sculptures when a voice said, Your inner world seems fine, in case you were wondering. Rukia. With Shiroyuki at her side. He should have been at the soul tunnel a long time ago. Easy place to get lost in, he said. Why is your inner world sideways? Rukia asked. Ichigo faced away, turning slightly red. Is that not normal? It isn't. Festivals probably aren't normal either. Everyone loves festivals. They don't love being sideways. Yuki-chan, a voice shouted, and Shiro-chan ran up to them. Hey, can I eat the food like Kuro Bstrd did? Shiro-chan asked. Ichigo explained, Kuroasan ate some of the food before I could stop him. Okay, Rukia said. That doesn't bother you. I eat the food all the time. But it's part of you, so it's not going anywhere. Shirayuki added, the food is merely a natural outflow. It contains meaning, but the meaning will not be lost if the food is eaten, only accessed. Shiro-chan, eat as much as you like. With a grateful holler, Shiro-chan ran back to the goldfish pond, Shirayuki pursuing, leaving Ichigo to stand uncomfortably alongside Rukia. Shall we explore the festival? It's never had anyone but me and Yuki in it before, she suggested. He grunted. What's the problem? Playing the games is fine, but it doesn't seem right to eat you. It's fine. You can eat me whenever you want. Are you sure? Taking his hand, she said, the best takoyaki stall is right over there. I'll show you. They sat in their own spiritual bodies in Urahara Kisuke's training basement, facing each other and not speaking. Ichigo felt a little odd about eating the food in Rukia's inner world. He'd seen a red-haired boy and a black-haired man who looked a lot like Ichigo. A huge house that she called home but hated to visit. He'd heard the tinkling of bells and remembered desperately eating an undercooked rice ball and being suffused with satisfaction. He'd remembered dancing with her Zanpakuto on a training ground in the woods beneath the light of the crescent moon, the fluttering white ribbon at the end of her Sodi no Shirayuki, his only partner. Not his. Her. Rukia's memories. To have seen them was incredibly NTMT. In the winter festival, it had felt natural to be so close, but out of their inner worlds, it embarrassed him. I want to perform Jinzen one more time, Ichigo finally said. Rukia looked at her phone. We can do Jinzen anywhere. Every moment we're here costs money. Just a little bit longer, Ichigo insisted. I don't know if I can do it if I wait. Rukia looked at him quizzically. A little longer. Ichigo closed his eyes. He opened his eyes amid the sideways blue skyscrapers. Shiro-chan stood before him, 2 black marks on his left cheek. Ichigo didn't know how Shirayuki had caused them, but he thought they might be permanent, and that Rukia's Zanpakuto had marked one of his made him uncomfortable and a little pleased. Kuroasan was holding an abstract ice sculpture and a small potted bonsai tree, the red demon mask still strapped to the side of his head. He seemed deeply pleased with his acquisitions. Rukia had said it was fine, but Ichigo couldn't help thinking she'd been influenced by the festive mood. Regardless, there had to be something nice in his world to give in return. Following his Zanpakuto, he circled a building, looking for a door, but found none. Another blue skyscraper had a door, but it didn't open. Kuroasan warned Ichigo that it was a fake door, just a mere facade. He explained that none of the doors opened and mentioned a ledge he hid under when it rained. Ichigo asked if that was where Kuroasan would put the ice sculpture and the bonsai tree, to which Kuroasan simply replied, "Ah." Ichigo felt determined to find a way into the buildings of his inner world. He tried a second door, and a third, but as Kuroasan had said, they weren't real doors, they were just images. Attempting to open them caused him to feel disoriented, as if the world was sideways. From a normal vertical perspective, he was at a right angle to the actual orientation of his surroundings. Choosing a building at random, Ichigo noted the skyward pointing end and the ground-facing end, trying to make sense of the world's layout. He moved on to the top facet of a skyscraper, where he searched for a trapdoor but found none. Sitting cross-legged to think, Shiro-chan asked what he was doing. Ichigo replied that he was looking for a way in, but Shiro-chan encouraged him to just go in. Ichigo realized, for the first time, what Shiro-chan meant by calling him king. Gathering his energy, he punched the glass window beneath him. They fell into a beige and blue room, surrounded by shattered glass. Ichigo landed on what would have been a wall in a normal world but decided to think of it as the floor. One wall had overhead fluorescent lighting, while another was covered in grayish-blue carpet, with uncomfortable blue chairs reminiscent of his dad's clinic. Next to the chairs was a large oval table, which Ichigo pulled down to the floor, to avoid things sliding off. Kuroasan carefully placed his bonsai tree and ice sculpture on the table. Shiro-chan, excited, ran down the hall. Ichigo sighed, acknowledging that Shiro-chan had said something useful, but he wished he would act more maturely. There could be dangerous things in his inner world, like old fears and bad memories. Shiro-chan returned with a small, bristly bundle of green, a 2.5-foot-tall plastic Christmas tree with dim lights. "I found a tree," he exclaimed, comparing it to something from Shirayuki's world. Ichigo, however, was not impressed and suggested they find other items to repay Rukia for the ice sculpture and bonsai tree. As Ichigo walked through the halls, he noticed the small, drab rooms filled with various oddities, such as a comically large mug and several toy mice. Nothing seemed suitable for Rukia. Kuroasan appeared in the doorway, holding a large disco ball. Ichigo remarked that it was uncool, but Kuroasan believed Rukia would like it. Reluctantly, Ichigo allowed him to take it. Following Kuroasan back to the first room, which felt like a lobby compared to the others, Ichigo was taken aback when Shiro-chan charged in with a nearly 4-foot-high Chappie plushie. "Isn't this that rabbit thing Rukia likes?" Shiro-chan asked. Ichigo was shocked and questioned how it ended up in his inner world. Shiro-chan explained he found it near a toilet, which confused Ichigo even more. They decided to bring the rabbit along, and as Ichigo pondered the oddities in his inner world, Kuroasan returned with a line of snow globes balanced on his sword. Ichigo questioned one depicting Santa Claus and a child, and Kuroasan explained it was a punishment for disobedience. Ichigo chose the 3 least graphic snow globes to give to Rukia, thinking they, along with the Chappie doll, would make a suitable return gift. Shiro-chan stumbled back into the lobby, carrying a huge arcade game that barely fit through the corridor. It was a Dance Dance Revolution game, something Ichigo had seen at the arcade but never used. He had passed the point of surprise. The Chappie doll made sense in a twisted way, but he couldn't understand why the arcade game was in his inner world. Ichigo decided they would give it to Rukia, knowing it would likely bring a smile to her face. Sighing, he grabbed the disco ball, and they set off, Ichigo leading with the disco ball under one arm, the giant Chappie doll in front of him, while Kuroasan followed with the snow globes and Shiro-chan lugged the Dance Dance Revolution game. As they approached the Soul Tunnel, Ichigo noticed the sky darkening, stars glimmering, and the scent of pine and festival foods in the air. He entered the void of the Soul Tunnel and emerged onto the snow of Rukia's inner world, where he found Rukia and Shirayuki waiting. Her eyes widened when she saw what Ichigo was carrying. "Chappie!" Rukia exclaimed. He tossed the plush toy to her, and she asked, "Where did you get this?" Ichigo shrugged, and she squealed with delight as Shirayuki approached, arms extended and dark eyes wide. Ichigo handed her the disco ball. Holding it, she flicked her wrists, and it rose into the air, hanging 30 feet above the ground. Inner worlds were strange. Rukia was too busy hugging the Chappie plush to notice Zangetsu exiting with 3 snow globes and a round of blank CDs. Shiro-chan, struggling with the arcade game, was harder to miss. Rukia pressed the Chappie plush into Shirayuki's arms and asked, "What is that?" With a grunt, Shiro-chan set the arcade game on the ground beneath the floating disco ball. "We need to plug it in," Ichigo said, wondering if the festival had a power outlet. Shiro-chan pressed a button, and to their surprise, the little stage lit up, and music began to play. It wasn't the electronic music Ichigo had expected. It was strings with heavy bass, some percussion, and a melody reminiscent of an oboe but deeper. Rukia remarked, "This is not the kind of music Yuzu and Karen listen to." "It's a waltz," Ichigo replied. "Glazunov, maybe?" "Sounds Russian." The name and composer were on the tip of his tongue. Shiro-chan corrected him, it's Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2. Ichigo asked, how do you even know that? Shiro-chan replied, I know everything you know, except I don't forget it. Ichigo would have argued, but the sight of Rukia caught his attention. With wide eyes and a silly grin, she skipped around the Dance Revolution arcade game. Ichigo, dance with me, she urged. I don't dance, he protested. But you know how a waltz is to be danced. In theory, he admitted. She took his hand and pulled him onto the little stage with her. As they stood close, Ichigo felt the warmth of her hand on his wrist. He placed his right hand on her back, and she had that starry-eyed look on her face. He guided her, saying, put your left hand on my shoulder, and we just step where it lights up and try not to fall off. Beneath the starry blue sky, they danced to Shostakovich's second waltz on the pure white snow. Later, Rukia watched glumly as Urahara rang up the charge. Despite her earnings, she still viewed 10 kan as a lot of money. 78 kan, Urahara said, and Rukia winced. Ichigo offered, I can pay. No, she replied. I get a paycheck too. Respect your senpai, she teased, using her phone to pay. It looked like the price was causing you a problem, Ichigo noted. Rukia explained, do you even know how much money House Kachiki has? I could buy this whole shop if I wanted. Then why'd you look so concerned when it came time to pay, he asked. I did not look concerned. I prefer to save my family account for family affairs, she insisted. Ichigo said, I don't want to mooch. Fine. Pay for something for me next time, she replied. Ichigo nodded and turned to Urahara. I've been wanting to buy some human world things. Can I get my Shinigami money converted into yen? Urahara agreed, asking how many yen he wanted. Ichigo inquired about the exchange rate, and Urahara informed him it was 67 yen for 1 kan. Ichigo decided on 6,000 yen, thinking it would be enough for the arcade, even if Rukia joined him. Urahara scanned Ichigo's soul phone and handed him the money, cheerfully stating, pleasure doing business with you. Ichigo replied, yeah. Sure. Urahara then asked if Ichigo's father paid him for helping out at his clinic. Rukia laughed, a bit nervously. Urahara continued, Kochiki-san, I've lived in this town for 20 years. Do you really think I never noticed an orange-haired boy with uncontrolled Ryatsu? Years ago, I put a seal on his powers so hollows wouldn't find him. One day, the seal broke, and this happened. Nothing happened, Rukia denied. Urahara explained, Kurosaki-san was attacked by a hollow. When the night was over, the hollow was defeated, your powers were too reduced to maintain a Shihakusho, and Kurosaki-san became a substitute Shinigami. A month later, you regained your powers, and Kurosaki-san awakened his own Shinigami powers, linking your Ryatsus and Zanpakuto. Rukia tightened her grip on the hilt of Sodi no Shirayuki. Urahara offered his expertise, but Rukia challenged him to prove he was a Shinigami. Haven't my products done that already? He asked. Prove to me that you were a Shinigami, she insisted, expecting him to show her an old badge or division photo. With a bemused smile, Urahara raised his cane. Wake up, Beniheim. The wood of the cane transformed into a Zanpakuto in Shikai, radiating a surprising level of Ryatsu. Rukia's eyes widened in shock. You said you're in exile. Why do you have a Zanpakuto? Urahara remarked that they should have stripped Ichigo of his responsibilities. He suggested that they could trust each other since they both had something to hold over the other. Ichigo, with his Zanpakuto half drawn, questioned Urahara's intentions. Urahara reassured him that he only wanted to satisfy his curiosity and requested to examine both Ichigo and Rukia, adding that Ichigo should bring his human body when he decided to come. Rukia, feeling dazed, pulled Ichigo out of the shop. She had believed that no one knew her secret and felt guilty for lying to Captain Yukitake. However, the shopkeeper was aware. She shunpoed high into the air, looking down at the town below, feeling grateful for Ichigo's presence beside her. As a puffy white cloud drifted by, Rukia considered their options. She suggested that they could incapacitate Urahara and adjust his memories, but acknowledged that both Urahara and Tessai were strong. Ichigo agreed, stating that they weren't criminals and attacking someone who only wanted to help didn't feel right. Ichigo then mentioned his plans to go to an arcade with friends and invited Rukia to join. She pondered the idea, realizing it would be a good cultural experience. She had chosen not to erase her memories from the people in Karakura, as she had grown fond of them. The next day, getting a jigai from Urahara was awkward but manageable, with one complication: the jigai had made her taller. Urahara had adjusted it so she was only slightly taller than before. While waiting outside the arcade with Ichigo, she felt a bit out of place in her new form. Tatsuki and Orihime arrived first, greeting them warmly. Rukia put on her polite human act, bowing and smiling brightly. She shared details about her living situation, using her older brother as a model for her story. Ichigo noticed Orihime looking at Rukia with watery eyes, recognizing a similarity to her own past. As Mizuiro and Kigo approached, Kigo enthusiastically hugged Rukia, prompting Ichigo to intervene. Kigo then teased Ichigo about keeping in touch with Rukia, leading to questions about their relationship. Both Ichigo and Rukia quickly denied any romantic involvement. They entered the arcade, greeted by the cozy dimness and the sounds of games. Rukia was captivated by a game that reminded her of their shared experiences, while Ichigo felt a sense of embarrassment about the phrase, "our song," that Rukia mentioned. Rukia insisted they play Dance Dance Revolution, and despite Ichigo's reluctance, she pulled him to the game. After some playful banter, Ichigo finally agreed to put in the coins, recalling a previous outing to the batting cages. As the music started, he found himself enjoying the game, laughing when he missed steps or bumped into Rukia, a rare moment of joy for him. Rukia laughed often, but it was usually the overly cheerful ho-ho-ho that no one seemed to notice was forced. Yet, she found herself genuinely laughing this time. After the first song, Ichigo stepped back, and Orihime took his place, showcasing her impressive skills at the game. Standing next to Tatsuki, Ichigo's heart rate began to normalize. Tatsuki asked, "You're sure she's not your girlfriend?" "I'm sure," Ichigo replied. "Just hanging out with the girl who lives an hour and a half away?" Ichigo shrugged. "Aside from that, how's life?" "Oh, you know. School." He thought of the Hollows, a Quincy, visiting another dimension, learning magic spells, and the talking swords within him. The usual. "You. How's karate?" "I've decided I need to focus on strength and speed to reach the next level. I've been working on my physical capabilities." "Running and weightlifting?" Ichigo inquired. "Something like that," Tatsuki said. The conversation felt awkward. Had it really been so long since they spent time together that they had forgotten how to talk? No, it was more about how Tatsuki was looking at him, as if searching for something. He said, "Mortal Kombat." "Mortal Kombat," she agreed. Time passed in a blur of lights and sounds. Rukia stood alone in the arcade, sipping sweet tea. She had run out of coins and hadn't yet found Ichigo for more. She had played long enough and needed a break. Ichigo was still engrossed in a game against Kigo, and Orihime had been with Mizuiro. "Enjoying yourself?" Tatsuki asked, approaching Rukia. Rukia didn't turn. "Yes, but all these intense games are a bit much for me. I need a moment to calm down." Tatsuki chuckled. "And you, Arisawa-san? Why aren't you playing?" "Just wanted to talk." Rukia remained silent, noticing how people often felt compelled to fill the silence left by her brother's forbidding presence. "What do you hate, Kuchiki-san?" Tatsuki asked. "That's an unusual question, Arisawa-san. Just curious." Rukia glanced around the arcade, watching Ichigo as he remained focused on the game while Kigo struggled. "I hate feeling inadequate. Not belonging or deserving to be where I am." Tatsuki nodded. For me, I hate feeling powerless. That's also a terrible feeling, Rukia agreed. I want to be powerful, but I'm not sure how. You're skilled in karate, which is great, but physical power isn't always what's needed in today's world. Financial, social, and intellectual strength are what truly matter. I suppose. Rukia had liked Tatsuki during their school days. Although being a martial arts enthusiast was different from being a Shinigami, Tatsuki felt familiar and easier to understand. However, Tatsuki's serious demeanor now worried her, as if she sensed something deeper. What are your intentions toward Ichigo? Tatsuki asked. Rukia suppressed a sigh of relief. Perhaps the shoujo manga she had read weren't as unrealistic as she thought. She laughed lightly and said, "Intentions, Arisawa-san. I just want to enjoy the company of my good friend Kurosaki-san." Why, do you like him? Tatsuki blushed. No. You're blushing. Of course I'll blush if you ask a question like that. He's just a friend. Just a friend, perhaps, but Rukia sensed that Tatsuki had considered the possibility of more, especially if Rukia had taken care of that hollow herself. Now, it seemed unlikely, as they lived in different worlds. He might not seem it, but Ichigo is very generous with those he cares about. He could hurt himself trying to protect others, Tatsuki said. I know, Rukia replied. He's smart, but in some ways, he could be easily taken advantage of. He keeps insisting on coming to see me. I have to argue with him to come see him instead to keep it fair. It wasn't the best way to describe how he pushed himself further into Shinigami life, but it was the best she could manage in the moment. Tatsuki added, he does a lot of risky things. Getting into fights, skateboarding when he was younger. I'll try to rein that in, but I think he'll always insist on doing dangerous things. Like becoming a police officer. Rukia had come to see a police officer as a closer analogy to a Shinigami than a soldier. Most police officers might go their entire careers without facing life-or-death situations, but from what she learned in her human history class, the Godei 13 operated very differently from a human army, resembling a police department more closely. Take care of him, Kuchiki-san. Ichigo had been called into the principal's office plenty of times for fights he hadn't started, for his orange hair, and for talking to the air when he was younger and hadn't realized ghosts were real. He learned to enter with a mix of nervousness and controlled defiance. Walking into Urahara's shop felt similar to entering the principal's office. The door chimed, and Urahara looked up, greeting them. Kuchiki-san, Kurosaki-san, it's good to have you back. And in human form this time, Kurosaki-san. Ichigo shrugged, not wanting Kon involved. Urahara called out, Jinta. The red-haired boy appeared from the back, and Urahara led them into a simple stockroom. He pulled a lamp, and a section of the wall slid away, revealing a spiral staircase leading down. With their zanpakuto in hand, Rukia and Ichigo followed him down the stairs into a corridor, then down another spiral staircase. They emerged into a laboratory filled with bubbling beakers, intricate instruments, microscopes, a hospital bed, and 2 glass booths lined with more equipment. Urahara said, Kurosaki-san, please take off your human body. Ichigo quickly complied, finding it easier each time. Urahara placed the body on the hospital bed. I'd like to make a few modifications. As it stands, any passing Shinigami might notice the striking resemblance between this human body and the talented Shinigami Kurosaki Ichigo. I'll adjust the hair to gradually darken into an orangish brown. It's normal for light-haired humans to have their hair darken with age. Urahara noted that Ichigo's body was already above average height for a Japanese male and decided to stop its growth. He then smacked his palm against Ichigo's face, causing a minor injury. What the hell? Ichigo exclaimed, gripping Zangetsu. You stepped on a child's wagon, fell, broke your nose, and it won't heal quite right. I think I'll make it flatter, Urahara explained. Excellent, Rukia commented. Rukia. Don't just go along with this, Ichigo protested. It makes perfect sense, she replied. Ichigo wasn't thrilled about the idea of looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger. Urahara continued, mentioning that the proportions of Ichigo's face were changing slightly as his cheekbones grew. Different eyes, different hair, different nose, different cheeks. A shame you used your real name signing up as a Shinigami, Urahara remarked. Hey, Ichigo, is there a way to change your official human name? Rukia asked. Sure, Ichigo replied. If you think I should spend my whole human life going by a false name, something I don't refer to myself as in my own head. Rukia froze and bowed slightly. My apologies. I was insensitive. Don't bow to me like that. It's weird, Ichigo said. As Urahara worked on Ichigo's nose, Rukia began to share the story of how their connection came to be. When it came time to explain how she regained her powers, she simply stated, eventually, Ichigo, while in the process of pushing my Ryatsu into me, learned his Zanpakuto's name, and I regained my powers. Fascinating, Urahara said, finishing up Ichigo's nose. And since then you've been experiencing this near telepathy? It's getting stronger, Rukia confirmed. At first it was only sensing him easily. Now. I know where she is all the time, and I sort of have an idea of her mood, Ichigo added. When he's in a fight, I almost see it, Rukia said. If I focus, I can usually tell roughly what she's doing, Ichigo explained. We entered each other's inner worlds, Rukia concluded. Urahara looked genuinely surprised. Expand on that. Rukia and Ichigo shared the story, interjecting whenever they liked, and concluded with their experience on the Dance Dance Revolution stage. You kept stepping on my feet, Rukia said. You kept putting your feet where I was supposed to step, Ichigo countered. It's not my fault. You said the game wasn't designed for circles. We did much better at the one in the arcade. We should go to one of your human dance halls soon, Rukia suggested. Hell no, Ichigo replied. You always say that, but you know you'd have fun, Rukia teased. Just because your release command is dance doesn't mean I have to like dancing, Ichigo insisted. But you do like dancing, as long as you don't let yourself feel embarrassed, Rukia pointed out. Watching their playful banter, Urahara raised an eyebrow. So you too, he began, making a suggestive gesture. No. Rukia exclaimed. Why would you even think that? Ichigo added. Why does everyone think that? Ichigo is just a kid, Rukia said. I'm not a kid, Ichigo retorted. You're 15, Rukia reminded him. I have a real adult job now. That means I'm not a kid anymore, Ichigo argued. Clearly you haven't seen Vice Captain Yachiru, Rukia replied. If I'm a kid, what kind of pervert does that make you? Ichigo shot back. Rukia sputtered, that was a medical procedure. Is that what they called it in your day? Ichigo teased. She puffed up. Ancient one. Urahara interrupted, for that power transfer to work, I'd expect that you'd have to use a method to thin your boundaries. So if it wasn't that, how? Just the one time, Rukia clarified. But it was only a medical procedure. Urahara nodded. For that to be of assistance, true intimacy would be required. Medical procedure. Rukia insisted, clenching her fist. Ma, of course you're right, Urahara said. A medical procedure. However it happened, it is what it is, so let's run some tests. Kuchiki-san, please sit in that booth, and Kurosaki-san, in the other. They each sat in a glass booth filled with small instruments, and a monitor on Urahara's desk began to beep. Urahara let it collect raw data while he continued working on Ichigo's body. After a while, he began testing them, asking them to flare and suppress their Ryatsu, first together and then separately. He showed one a flash card and asked the other what it said, and had them release their Shikai. Interesting, Urahara noted. Please reseal your Zanpakuto and exchange them. Confused, they each sat back in their booths with the other's sealed Zanpakuto. Kurosaki-san, I wonder if your Zanpakuto would be amenable to being released by Kuchiki-san, Urahara suggested. That's impossible, Rukia replied. After a moment's hesitation, Ichigo said, Kuroasan doesn't like it, but Shiro-chan is willing to try. Rukia, you remember his release command? Rukia stared at the Zanpakuto and declared, reign over all creation, Shiro-chan Zangetsu. To her surprise, Ichigo's Zanpakuto transformed, and Rukia found herself holding the long, white triangular cleaver of Shiro-chan Zangetsu. Ichigo turned bright red. BSTRD, he exclaimed. Rukia also blushed, her satisfaction fading as she gave Shiro-chan a stern look. Behave yourself, she commanded. Urahara asked, Kuchiki-san, should I take it that you're able to communicate with Kurosaki-san's Zanpakuto while holding it? Rukia nodded. And Kurosaki-san, you can still hear it? Urahara continued. Little faded, but yeah, Ichigo confirmed. Remarkable. Kurosaki-san, release Kuchiki-san's Shikai, Urahara instructed. Ichigo waved it awkwardly. Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki. Frost spread up the blade's hilt, and Ichigo cursed. Fool, ask respectfully, in the right frame of mind, Rukia advised. Ichigo focused, recalling the memory of Rukia dancing with Sodi no Shirayuki beneath the crescent moon. Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki, he commanded. He had never known that the coming of winter was so much like a flower unfolding. The blade turned white in his hand, with white ribbons fluttering behind him. The air chilled, tiny ice crystals forming, and for an instant, Ichigo felt that no matter how intense the cold became, it could never be anything but refreshing. An instant later, he was fighting shivers, realizing it was Rukia who felt that way. Urahara asked, how does it feel? Like I'm using someone else's Zanpakuto, Ichigo replied. Rukia added, she doesn't like it either. She says she'd only do it for real if there were no other choice. Urahara said. I'd like to go further, but if the Zanpakuto are agitated, it's best not to push them. Seal your Zanpakutos. We're done for the day. They exchanged their Zanpakutos back, Rukia still absorbing the fact that they had been able to release each other's Zanpakutos. She had heard of such a thing, but only in fiction, mostly very sappy romances. Ichigo asked, so? I'll have a clearer answer once I've analyzed the data, came the response. Ichigo shifted uncomfortably. Something on your mind, Kurosaki-san? Ichigo hesitated before asking, since our souls intermingled and the like, is Rukia sort of my sister now? His expression revealed his apprehension about the answer. Urahara replied, the short answer is no, absolutely not. The long answer. He explained that spiritual mingling occurred on a minor level between people who were emotionally close and often in each other's presence. This was most commonly observed between older married couples. Ichigo and Rukia, however, had artificially reached a level of mingling that was rarely achieved naturally due to the Hogyoku's influence. While the bond would never completely fade, they could ease it back by avoiding each other and not thinking about or caring for one another, which would be a difficult task. If they continued to be good friends, the bond would strengthen. Urahara suggested that exploring the bond would only deepen it further. I'll know more later, but I believe you created the bond in a mechanical, if nearly irreproducible, way. Attempting to undo it would be complicated and possibly traumatic. From what you've said, your Zanpakutos would likely protest, so we can dismiss that possibility. I do not think the bond is strengthening. Instead, you're becoming attuned to it, just as a sound seems louder when you pay attention to it. The key to preventing it from causing problems is to master it. Experiment with it, press its boundaries, in Jinzen and without. Learn to control it. Physical contact may be useful, as well as replicating the original circumstances. After class, Ichigo walked to the back of the room and stopped in front of Ishida Yuryu's desk. Ishida glared, then looked away, only to glare again. We should talk, Ichigo said. Zipping his bag, Ishida stood and moved toward the door, joining the line of exiting students. For a moment, Ichigo thought Ishida was ignoring him, but the ex-Quincy paused, clearly waiting. Rukia was elsewhere in town, doing her rounds, and Ichigo turned his attention to her. It wasn't exactly telepathy, there were no words, just a gentle nudge for her attention, and he felt her awareness seep into him in response. Ichigo followed Ishida to the roof of the school, which was an interesting choice. Perhaps Ishida didn't realize that Ichigo and his friends typically ate there, making it effectively Ichigo's territory. Or maybe he knew and didn't care. They faced each other in a long, uncomfortable silence until Rukia landed softly on the roof between them. Ichigo didn't let his eyes flicker toward her, and Ishida didn't notice her presence at all, currently without spiritual powers. Ichigo leaned against the fence that edged the roof and asked, "You still hate me?" "Yes," Ishida replied. "That's fine. I'm still angry at you for the bait." Ishida looked aside, his face twisting, revealing his shame over what he had done. "But I don't have anything left against you." "I'm not planning to do anything," Ichigo added. The unspoken question lingered, did Ishida still harbor resentment? Ishida adjusted his glasses, and Ichigo sighed dramatically. "I can understand why you'd hate Shinigami. Captain Yukatake told me how they destroyed most Quincy's. Even his version sounded pretty harsh, a horrible yet necessary choice. I imagine the Quincy version sounds different." "No," Ishida said. "The version I heard also made it sound like a difficult and necessary choice. When I was told the story, I sided with the Shinigami." "Oh," Ichigo said, taken aback. "Why did you say you hate Shinigami, then?" Ishida explained, "My sensei was a very kind man. As the last Quincy, the Shinigami kept him under observation, and he wanted to collaborate with them. He dreamed of working together, but they always refused, answering every offer with, 'Do not interfere with our work.' He informed them of pluses they'd missed, and they said, 'Do not interfere with our work.' When possible, he avoided hollows, and when forced to fight them, he tried to disable or trap them so the Shinigami could purify them. And they said, 'Do not interfere with our work.'" Ishida continued, "One day, 5 large hollows attacked. It was obvious he couldn't win, and he faced them alone. 2 hours later, the Shinigami arrived 1 hour after Sensei died. In the end, Sensei's ideals never reached the Shinigami. If they had acknowledged his opinion, if they had recognized the strength of the Quincy, they would have come earlier, and Sensei's death wouldn't have happened." Ishida's fist clenched in frustration. Ichigo absorbed the story, recognizing that the Shinigami had made a mistake regarding Ishida Uryu. He had a legitimate grievance. However, Ichigo was still too angry over the fact that Karen had almost died to respond completely without bitterness. "That SCKS," Ichigo said. "That really SCKS. It's a story where the Shinigami sound negligent. But what do you think of how the story ends? The young Quincy grows up a little, uses hollow bait to challenge a rookie Shinigami to a competition, and more hollows come than he'd expected. Aminos, even, and it could have gone really badly if the rookie Shinigami's experienced partner hadn't returned from Soul Society so promptly." Ishida's cheek twitched, his jaw rigid. The young Quincy was very foolish, and what the Shinigami captain did to him, while tyrannical, wasn't completely unwarranted. The admission seemed to take a lot of effort for Ishida, pushed out between gritted teeth. Ichigo was impressed that Ishida could look at himself so objectively. Ichigo said, "Captain Yukatake mentioned something about some Quincy's regaining their powers." Ishida replied, "He mentioned it to me as well, requesting that if I regained my powers, I should use them more responsibly." Ishida's lip curled, but his eyes were downcast. "I hope you do," Ichigo said. He hesitated, then added, "If you do get your powers back, maybe we could work together a bit. Collaborate." Ichigo looked away, stretching, pretending not to notice the weight of what he had just said. "It's not like I've got any influence. I'm just a rookie, and a strange one too. My legal status is a bit up in the air. But for my part, if you wanted to tell me about any pluses I'd missed, I'd be happy to hear about them. As for fighting hollows, Oriheim's brother ended up turning into a hollow. There's a decent chance my mom ended up as a hollow, or as part of one. I don't know about your sensei. So, setting aside the balance of the worlds, Ichigo expressed his preference that hollows not be destroyed if possible. He suggested that if Ishida could disable and capture them, waiting for him to arrive and purify them would be a great help. Rukia, standing close to Ishida, nodded in agreement. Ichigo added that Rukia, although not an officer, had significant influence, and if she spoke to her captain, he might listen. Ishida, however, was firm in his stance, stating he wouldn't serve the Shinigami. Ichigo reassured him that he wasn't asking for that, but pointed out that without the ability to purify hollows, they couldn't be equals. He proposed a junior partnership instead. Ishida's expression darkened at this suggestion. Ichigo continued, explaining that being a Shinigami was more than just their actions, it was part of their very essence. He acknowledged that Ishida, being human, would have a normal life and that fighting hollows was just a side endeavor for him. He also mentioned that when Ishida died, there was a good chance he would become a Shinigami, likely a strong one. Ishida seemed displeased by this notion. Ichigo shrugged it off, stating that it was all irrelevant until Ishida regained his powers and departed, leaving Ishida alone on the roof. Meanwhile, Urahara Kisuke was feeling satisfied. He didn't need his complex plans to unfold, he simply needed Aizen's schemes to fail, and he welcomed any unpredictable element that could disrupt them. Thus, he focused on his humans, who were making good progress but needed further development. It wasn't unusual for a hollow to appear in the living world only to retreat after assessing the strength of the local Shinigami. So, when Urahara captured a level 2 hollow and brought it back to his shop, Ichigo and Rukia didn't question its disappearance. In the underground training basement, Sato was practicing his punches, Inoue was trying to shield the wall with her Shun Rika, and Tatsuki was engaged in a sword drill. Urahara, using a camouflage technique, released the hollow, feeling like a cat bringing a mouse to its young. He noted that while Yoruichi could have symbolically done this, they had a rule against her revealing her true form in Karakura town, as Aizen remained unaware of her feline identity. The students reacted with surprise when they saw the hollow. Sato instinctively launched an attack that missed, while Inoue shrieked and attempted to protect herself and Sato with a shield. Tatsuki, however, stood ready with her sword. Urahara observed Sato's abilities with interest, noting that the Hogyoku had enhanced his natural fullbring. He speculated that Sato might reach vice-captain level quickly, which could prove useful. He had less confidence in Oriheim as a fighter, but her healing abilities were exceptional, potentially allowing her to surpass even Captain Unohana in some aspects. Tatsuki, on the other hand, seemed less promising. The Hogyoku had granted her strength, but she lacked any unique abilities or sacred objects that could enhance her power. Urahara recognized that she was merely a shadow of a Shinigami, likely reaching only the level of a 10th seed at best. However, he noticed the determination in her eyes as she trained, willing to risk everything for no clear reason. As she faced her first hollow, a creature resembling a large beetle, she adjusted her stance, ready to fight. Urahara discreetly cast spells to restrain Inoue and Sato, knowing they could easily defeat the hollow once they calmed down, which he wanted to avoid. Tatsuki's initial strike was cautious but firm, making contact with the hollow's claw but not penetrating its tough exterior. The hollow retaliated, and Tatsuki skillfully evaded its attacks, maintaining a determined grin despite the odds. She circled the hollow, trying to find an opening. Although she was more agile, the hollow's bulk made it difficult for her to outmaneuver it. When she finally found an opportunity, her strike landed but only grazed the hollow, leaving a mark rather than a decisive blow. The hollow charged at her, but Tatsuki rolled with the impact, quickly regaining her footing and striking again as it passed. The hollow turned, sweeping its claws at Tatsuki, who leapt away just in time. She had a cut on her head from where it had grazed her, and Urahara could tell she likely had heavy bruises and possibly cracked bones from the impact. Yet, despite her injuries, she wore a broad grin. Urahara wished he had popcorn and a lawn chair to enjoy the show. Behind Tatsuki, Inoue was still bound and making noise, but Tatsuki quickly refocused on the hollow. Urahara had used a bakudo that they wouldn't recognize, and he hoped Tatsuki was considering whether their situation was due to the hollow's power or his lesson, but she wasn't dwelling on it while facing the threat. The hollow advanced more cautiously this time, and Tatsuki couldn't repeat her earlier tactic of striking its flanks. Instead, she maneuvered around, trying to find another weak spot on its shoulder while also targeting its claw, gradually wearing down its defenses. Her intent was sharp, even if her energy was waning. As she drew a thin line of blood on the hollow's claw, it adjusted its stance, shifting from a sweeping motion to an awkward stab. This hesitation could change the dynamics of the fight. However, Tatsuki was starting to tire, and her footwork would soon lose its precision. Instead of waiting her out, the hollow reared up on its back legs, aiming to crush her. Urahara felt a wave of nostalgia for the days when his enemies were less clever. Tatsuki, however, stepped directly under the hollow, and instead of waiting for it to come down, she swiftly cut off one of its claws at the shoulder, taking a hit from one of its legs in the process. Using the kick to propel herself out, she ducked and pivoted just as the hollow slammed down, bringing her blade down on its unprotected head. The hollow scattered into light, purified rather than destroyed. Perhaps Tatsuki's blade was indeed a real Zanpakuto after all. She placed a hand on her stomach where it had kicked her, noticing the blood. Urahara released the bakudos on Inoue and Sato, who rushed to Tatsuki's side. As she carefully sat, Inoue summoned her healing fairies. Urahara appeared between them with a swift movement. "No," he said to Inoue. "But your ability doesn't heal, it undoes. Tatsuki doesn't need that fight to be undone." One hand glowed with aquamarine healing energy. "Show me your stomach." Tatsuki lifted her shirt to reveal a ragged puncture just above her belly button. It hadn't gone deep, but it was still concerning. Sato spoke up, "You brought that hollow here. You bound Inoue and me." "Of course." "Tatsuki, how was the fight?" "It was a fight," she replied, gratitude evident in her voice. Urahara decided that of the three, he would place his biggest bet on her. Kurosaki Karen's talent was noticeably beyond Tatsuki's. Urahara admired humans for their diverse talents, which didn't seem as unevenly distributed as those of spirits. For Karen, one or two hollows wouldn't suffice, so he took her on a field trip, with her in Shinigami form and a jiken animating her body back in town. They ventured deep into the mountains, where Urahara spread a little hollow bait. The hollows came, and Urahara observed. He had devices to help her spiritual power feel more human. If she improved as quickly as he anticipated, he would need to innovate new ones. He had forgotten how much he enjoyed teaching. Urahara saw little reason to intervene in Ichigo's training, as Kuchiki Rukia proved to be a fierce and powerful instructor. Their experiences together had been significant, thanks to the Hogyoku's influence. Still, there was an extra layer to training. One could only truly learn to fight for their life against a superior opponent through experience. As summer vacation approached, Ichigo casually mentioned that he had ranked 18th in his grade, prompting Rukia to pat him on the back and remind him not to get too cocky. With summer came a trip to Soul Society, where they planned to stay for at least 3 weeks. Given the unusual occurrences in Karakura town, they would be replaced by 4 Shinigami, including the 8th seat and one from the 13th seat. For now, it was just Ichigo looking after Karakura town. Rukia had planned a quick trip back to her division to ensure everything was arranged. When she arrived, Captain Yukitake called her into his office and informed her of her promotion to 11th seat. She felt conflicted, as she was lying to him about Ichigo and the serious crime she had committed, while he was rewarding her. As she grappled with her feelings, she received a message to promptly come to the Kuchiki estate. There, she was presented to the Kuchiki elders as the clan's newest officer. They were polite and respectful, some even warm, and for a moment, she thought Nisama looked pleased. It would have been a pleasant experience if she hadn't felt like an imposter, reminiscent of her early days in division. The meeting was winding down when she sensed Ichigo's surprise, followed by anger and fear. She heard the clash of blades and felt a powerful Ryatsu, with Ichigo's energy rising in response. Back in the human world, Ichigo was fighting for his life.